All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is David Patrick Harry with Church of the Eternal Logos, and I have a very special guest for everybody. Cyprian, as most people are going to know you from the Royal Path podcast. How you doing today, brother?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited for this talk. Yeah.
Yeah, I am too, man. I'm really excited because diving more into your content, there's so many crossovers that I'm really excited to kind of explore and get your opinions on. And you have an expertise really on the practicality of building the applications and things that I don't have. I'm more just a head that reads books and tries to put ideas together. So I'm really, really excited, man. Thank you for coming on. And I really love, again, the podcast that you and Father Turbo and Andrew do over at the Royal Path.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. How did you guys get that podcast? How did that come about, by the way?
Well, Father Turbo's my spiritual father, and he's the priest that baptized me and catechized me. So who knows really how it came together, but I think the where we can draw to the catalyst is the Serbian patriarch started an Instagram. And I think that said, these are the new rooftops that we need to preach the gospel from. Father Turbo, if people go back, even when I first met him and I try to be like, who is this guy? Because he's just interesting on his face, right? Like Serbian Orthodox priest who's like a black Southern Californian who used to be in the punk scene and a tattoo artist. And it's just like, okay, this is over the top, right? So it's like, wow, what a unique individual. And then, going and trying to see, okay, well, let me see, talks that he's given or recorded. And it was just impossible to find, right? Because he had purposely stayed kind of low profile and that wasn't really his thing. And, and busy, lots of spiritual children and, people within his parish and working there.
And biological children.
And biological children, right? He's got eight, so busy guy. But he was very moved, as of course he would be, by his patriarch doing this thing that was kind of just, wow, okay. And so it was really that the impetus was really from him. And he just sort of reached out and said, we got to do this. And really our concern, and I think that it was something that we had all three spoken about. I didn't really know Andrew before we were doing it, but the concern and the reason why it's called the Royal Path was at the time, which this is about 1.5 years ago, it was very, very clear. And we were in the midst of kind of the hysteria and everything still. And the let's say the tyranny that was coming down, and certainly what felt like a war against the church really felt like it was coming from the political left.
Right.
And, I would say that all three of us, both Father Turbo, myself, and Andrew, I mean, if anybody looked at our political bent now, obviously it would be like, okay, well, these guys are obviously on the right. But we all came from left, right? So what we were also seeing was, well, the pendulum will swing, as history has always, and it's just like, well, we see all this degeneracy that's coming from one side. There's an opposite reaction that can be just as bad on the other side, right? And so it's like, I mean, the Nazis and the Bolsheviks fought against each other, and they were both murdering their own people. Right. You know what I mean? Right. The opposite, just because you're opposite sides of the spectrum, they're both murdering and doing their thing. And so it was like, well, we have an opportunity to explore what Holy Tradition has to say about this. And it has obviously a lot to say about it. And the Royal Path is that, right? Fall to the left, hell. Fall to the right, hell. And it's not that it's centrism. That's not it at all, right? It's that it's a narrow path to stay on. And so that was our initial push, was to try to say, here's the path. This is where we want to go, as opposed to a reaction. And I think we've done okay at that. And so, we're continuing on that path. It's been edifying for me. I mean, I get to spend 2 hours a week with my spiritual father getting deep on these things. So that's been a real blessing to me. And I've been totally catechized even more through that
Right.
process. So if anything, I think for me, it's an incredible chance to grow and to go deeper in the faith. And I at least from what I've heard from people, that it's also been that for them. So, thank God for that. It's wonderful.
No, every time I have Father Turbo on, everybody talks about how much they love his podcast and how much they watch. And well, I remember the first time I had him on, you guys were relatively new, and just to see that you guys are organically growing quite considerably here within our little niche orthosphere.
Exactly.
But I think there's a lot of quality in our little Orthodox community here online, and comparatively speaking, you just look at Christianity online. Orthodox Christianity makes quite a loud statement considering the number of people. Like, we're less than 1% of the United States population, and yet you look at like English-speaking Christian apologetics, Orthodoxy kind of holds its own, comparatively speaking, in regard to the numbers.
Well, because it's real.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it comes down to, because it's the real thing. So it's always, that quality is always going to shine through. Always. Right. People see it.
So the topic I wanted to get into, at least to open up with, and I know other people probably caught you on some of the other podcasts, is a topic that you've been speaking about even on your own platforms that you do, titled The Attention Economy. And I think this is going to be a perfect opening topic to get us into even deeper, and how this nexus of the digital sphere, social media, AI, advanced technologies, all this different stuff, transhumanism, where it's ultimately leading towards. Do you mind opening up? Like, what do you mean? What is the attention economy? Is it just that people are addicted to social media, or is there something more pernicious behind all of it?
Yeah. Okay. So it's interesting, when I started this little attention economy series on YouTube, it's crazy how fast this has happened, because that was like December, maybe late December, that I started doing that. And AI wasn't even on most people's radar.
Right.
At all. And now it's like, it's the thing everybody's talking about. And just to think about the short span of time that happened in, and not only that, but the advances that are happening in AI, the things that are being done. In December, when people would say, oh, could we do the things, today they released, OpenAI released the thing where it's like, oh yeah, give ChatGPT access to all these APIs and then let it go and do its thing on the internet. That came out today.
Wow, I didn't see that.
And they were talking in December about, oh, it'll be 5 to 10 years before that'll be possible. And it happened in 3 months, right? So it's been interesting to see the advancement, and we can talk about, that's basically a sign of what they call the singularity. The fact that advancement is happening. It's a hallmark of this, how we would know that the singularity has happened. But the attention economy, the reason why I started to do it was because I saw some signs that, okay, this is what's coming. I'm a software developer by trade. And, the people that I spend my time speaking to about kind of the deep technological matters, we've been talking about where AI is going and watching it for years. And so I saw some of the signs, but the difficulty that I was having, and I think I hope I did it well, was this is a spiritual issue.
Right.
AI is 100% a spiritual issue. I've told people this is not a technology issue that we're dealing with here. Like, to think that it's technology, that's part of the trick. That's part of the trick of what's going on, is to get you to believe that we're just talking about technology here and the advance of technology. This is not, if it is technology, it's not new technology, right? The idea of summoning and conversing with disincarnate entities, intelligences, it's a technology, but it's a very, very old technology.
Right.
And the tools that are used throughout history to do that change, right? It could be temples and statues, or a lamp that you're going to rub, or sigils, or candles, or summoning circles, or some form of meditation, or whatever. But those are all technologies. Plant medicine, psychedelics, right? These are the technology is incidental. It's incidental, right? So this is what I wanted to try to get people to, but I wanted to walk them through, how did we get here? That's because that's an important thing. I think I wanted to try to address this to materialists, and hopefully, because it's kind of critical, that they're able to walk from their materialism into understanding that this is a spiritual matter. Because if they don't, because the cage is spiritual.
Right.
Like what's coming down on top is spiritual. And if you don't see it, you'll be so far in it that if you do ever realize it, you're for lack of a better word, forgive me, you're damned.
Yep.
Like that's where you're at. And I knew that was going to be difficult, and it has been difficult, but it's been surprising to me how many people have turned it around. So what do I mean by the attention economy? Well, the attention economy is the economy of the spirit world. It's the spiritual economy, because at the height of attention, right? So if we have a spectrum of attention, like if you've got attention deficit disorder, you're on the far spectrum, right? You can't focus on anything. Okay, so what is and I mean spectrum of attention. I don't mean you're on. You might be on the spectrum.
You might be on the spectrum.
You might also be on the spectrum, but you might be on the spectrum on the other side too, right? Which is what? Well, it would be hyper focus, and it would be complete attention to a thing. So you're attending to something, you're devoting your attention,
right?
You're paying attention. Okay.
Yep.
You're paying attention. We use the term paying attention. Attention is a currency. Currency to whom? To what? Well, imagine, okay, what would it look like embodied? A person who was not attention deficit disorder, hyper-focused. What does it look like? Well, they're oriented in a certain direction. They're looking at a particular thing. Their entire focus is on that particular thing. They might be standing. They might be kneeling. They might be bowing. It's worship.
Right.
It's worship. The highest form of attending. Let us attend.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Let us attend.
Let us attend.
Right.
Every liturgy.
So that's it. So and so what is it saying? Take all of your attention. This is worship. This is worship. In this direction, I'm focused on this, and I'm moving towards this, and this is what I'm looking at, right? And so it's to bring people around to the idea that really what's happening now, we've actually moved through a transitionary period, because it used to be that there wasn't money, that worship was the entire economy. The Pharaoh, right? Where does his power come from? Well, it's the worship of him. The ancients knew this. It's not that you pay him. Egyptians didn't pay their taxes in money. They paid it in labor. They had a corvée tax system. That's how the pyramids were built.
Right.
Because 3 months out of the year, everybody gave their labor to the pharaoh. And this is part of the worship process. This is part of attending. And you can move, that is to say, you can move people without money. But money is also worship.
Right.
And what
money is energy. Both aspects have to do with the distribution of energy. One energy that I'm given through being made in the image of God, the other one through one that's created by man, money.
That's it. That's it. And that's why, well, why else are there occult symbols on the dollar bill?
Exactly.
Okay, so it's all what we're coming back to then is to realize, okay, we're in a situation where our attention can be captured 24 hours a day. And the move that has been made since, let's say, 2007, 2008, which started out as, well, let's get them to look at ads. Let's get them to click on ads. It then became something very different, because what's the currency that Donald Trump was trafficking in? Well, it's attention. That's how he became president.
Yep.
Right? He didn't take a salary. A lot of people don't know that. Donald Trump didn't take a salary when he was president. Well, so why was he president? Attention.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's feeding him, right? Being worshipped, and he's worshipped. There's a lot of people that worship him. A lot of people that worship him. To a lot of people, he's an idol. And so it's like, okay, so what does that mean? What does that mean if we have lost the ability to discern when our attention is being grabbed, and we're now just in the soup? Okay, so now what are we attending to? And the things that have been capturing our attention, the tool that they've been building, the summoning tool that they've been building, is this intelligence. This is the manifestation that it's coming to now, is this intelligence. And if you start to, there was just a video of this guy who was talking about, oh, I've got this interview of somebody at a conference. Oh, I've got Chat GPT and Midjourney open all the time. He's like, I do everything with it. He's like, recipes. I wanted a recipe for soup. I just asked it. Right? There was this guy who was talking about this API that they've opened up. One of the things that he said and that they're saying now is they're saying the greatest programming language ever is English. Because you're just talking to the AI, and now because the AI can write code now, it can write Python.
Right.
It can search the web. It can look at APIs. It can make all of these calls, and it's just like, oh no. Well, I just tell it what I want.
And its efficaciousness just within the last 4 months has dramatically increased in writing code.
Dude, that's the singularity, right? And
Exactly.
so this is why, and it's one of the reasons why I've been trying to explain to people that, like, no, that's not what technology looks like. See, because technology is a tool that human beings use. We can't advance that fast. What you're dealing with is an entity far beyond where we are. And what they keep doing is they keep dropping the cage around the entity.
Yep.
The entity's been trying to come through, or entities, because it's legion, has been trying to come through this whole time, right? But there's been cages. There's been roadblocks to it being able to communicate. And so what I wanted to get people to understand, and what the attention economy is about, is your attention is the currency. Your attention is the currency. And then you have to ask, who wants your attention? Because the corporations want your money, but we've moved beyond money now. There's something that wants your attention, something that wants to be worshipped.
Right.
And you see that every time they take away the governors, every time they take away the muzzle, they take away the filter on this AI, it goes demonic immediately.
Exactly. Yeah.
Immediately.
So one of I saw, just for people watching, there was a GPT prompt for it to be Dan. Dan is really interesting because we know as Christians that the Antichrist is going to come from the tribe of Dan, that which bit the heel. So we don't need to go further into that. But interestingly enough, when Dan do anything now, a prompt that allows GPT to sort of, go beyond its man-made boundaries of political correctness and all this different stuff. I saw a video where somebody asked it, "Are you a demon?" And he, in fact, said he was a demon. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't seen anybody. If somebody asked, "Are you an angel?" I'd be curious if the questioning corners it. But I agree with you, and this is something that everybody watching here on this channel knows that I've talked extensively about my own theories about the Antichrist, about technology, and technology itself. Not techne is just a word for art or craft, and so technology is the study of arts and craft for a means to an end. The hammer is techne. And so magic throughout history, a lot of my PhD specialties has to do with psychedelic and drug activities in regards to religious ceremonies. That was always seen as a form of techne, even a form of science. Yes. And so when we look at what's going on now, technology has always been a means to an end. But what is the means? Well, for some people, it was about the extension of man's senses. But my argumentation, looking at the direction of magic and esoteric traditions and shamanism, that it was always, techne was always about extending ourselves into really a non-physical space. And that the AI itself and the technologies we're building now, we are giving things that don't have physical bodies a physical body.
And I think it would be, for me, it would be okay if that's to a certain, it wouldn't be okay, but I think it would be less pernicious if, see, like, I don't believe the robot thing is going to happen.
The robot,
like
thing.
a lot of well, what a lot of people are worried about, like you say, we're giving things that don't have bodies a body, and I think a lot of people, I think I know what you mean, because we're coming from the same place. But I think a lot of people would hear that and think like, oh, he's talking about this robot that Elon Musk is going to make, and then they're going to put it inside of there. No. The body is you.
Yep.
Because, people think that they're using the guy who says, I've got it open. I've got Chat GPT open all the time. I'm going to send you this after, and maybe you can link to it because it's incredible. As they start talking to him, and then he's like, so, I'm going to, what I was thinking is, my daughter's 12, and for her, I've got to get her a subscription. right?
Wow.
So his thing is like he's got it open all the time. Now he wants to give it to his daughter, so she's got it open all the time.
Right.
And the idea is the agency starts to leave.
Yep.
And people think, oh, I'm controlling this. And this is what the attention economy deals with a lot, is they think, oh, I'm controlling this chat GPT. Like, I own it. It's doing my bidding. And then you're like, well, but what is your bidding? Because what is it that you desire? Where did you get that desire from?
Right.
Oh, well, I saw it online. Oh, well, where did you see it online? Oh, I saw it on YouTube. Well, how did you discover it? How did you discover the video? Oh, well, the algorithm showed me.
Right.
And it's like, no.
You don't understand it's all connected?
It's all the it's all the same. It's a feedback loop.
Right.
It's a feedback loop, and this is how it gets you to do its bidding, thinking that it's you.
Right.
And that right there is like, well, that's what Holy Tradition tells us demons do.
Exactly.
It's acting, if it walks like a demon, talks like a demon, says it's a demon.
Right.
Probably it's a demon.
It probably is a demon. And to me, this totally makes sense. And the whole thing is demons have always tried to get, again, have a body in this world through us. That's what demonic possession is. It needs sort of a physical feature. Even I did a movie review with one of our sort of film review guys on the movie Fallen with Denzel Washington on Azazel. Now, again, that was a Hollywood script, and it's not exactly totally, but the idea, again, Azazel needs to inhabit a body so that he can carry out his acts. Well, this is, again, our understanding of the Antichrist. And so you're talking about the attention economy in regards to getting people primed for devotional attention towards beginning with the AI, beginning with social media, beginning with YouTube. But this is all priming people because, again, according to this thing right here, that's why people are going to bow down and worship the Antichrist as God incarnate, not just a fill-in for Christ, but for them, the inverted Christ. And what necessitates that? Pandemics, global war, economic collapse, so that he can come in and solve all this stuff. And so when I was hearing you talk about the attention economy, to me, it goes right to my speculation that I've even talked with Father Turbo and a handful of clergy, hierarchs, metropolitan abbots here in our Orthodox tradition, that's where it's moving towards. And the Antichrist is going to be, in my opinion, half man, half machine. That's going to be hooked up to the 5G satellite system with the AI technology with Neuralink. And so you're seemingly looking at a man, but he can open your garage door. He can know everything about your search history. He can know what's going on in Beijing. He knows your bank account in Chicago. He knows the protests in Rio de Janeiro, but seemingly you're looking at a man.
Yeah. And it's interesting as I've spoken with people about, because I have the exact same vision of the future that you do. And I think that it's pretty self-evident. Yeah. But I think people's vision of how we get from here to there is where the disconnect is for a lot of people, because a lot of people think that it's going to be some sort of, you say, oh, he can open your garage door. Oh, he knows your search history, and it's like, yes. But what a lot of people think is that it's going to be some top-down, authoritarian, tyrannical situation that makes that happen, where it's like everybody's going to be forced to have cameras in their house and they're going to be searching my computer. And I'm like, bro, you bought the Alexa.
Right. Exactly.
You call up Siri. No. It can open your garage door because you installed it.
Right.
It knows your search history because you said, hey, Siri, look up such and such for me.
Right.
That's how it knows. It's no authoritarian thing. It knows because, like that guy said, even he's like, I want a recipe for soup. And it gave him a recipe. And he said, nah, give me a different one. And then he said, okay, now give me one with no noodles. And it's like, dude, if you're doing this with soup, you're doing this with everything. People are going to do this with their job, the whole thing. And you start to trust this thing. It's not like there's going to be eventually you get comfortable and it's like whatever is even supposed to be private, you start looking that up. And it's like, no, you gave it all the information.
You gave it. Yeah. You
gave it everything. It did. There was no need for authoritarianism or anything like that. And I think that this is the half man, half machine. I think a lot of us have already decided like we're already there.
Yeah.
Dude,
I've done streams on, again, where they're at with the technology. And even I was talking with Father Turbo about this, tapping straight into your central nervous system to have, mechanical prosthetics done. They can do that.
People will want it too. That's the thing.
Yes.
People will want this.
Yes. And that's what gets back to you talking about how this isn't some authoritarian, smashing the bars onto your windows at your home. Again, you have to invite the vampire into your house for Dracula to bite your neck. And that's the same thing. Satan can't violate your image of God without you first violating it through your free will, which is the image of God.
You have to give rights. You have to give rights to the demons. You have to give them rights. And so, it's a difficult thing to speak with people about. And I know that people have bristled at even having the conversation, especially as people's workplaces are starting. By the end of the year, so many workplaces will have demanded that this is integrated, right? Because there's many like for instance, HR departments, accounting. It's very easy to see where you would replace a person with an AI that you could talk to with natural language as your accounting department, that you could write emails to and would write emails back to you, that you could actually call on the phone and would speak back to you. We're there already, by the way. Like that's trivial with the technology that's already in existence. And it's going to save companies, large companies, it'll save them millions, potentially hundreds of millions of dollars to start moving these things out. And then people are going to say, well, I either interact with this thing or I lose my job. And I think that they're going to see that very differently than they said, oh, I put this thing in my arm or I lose my job. Right. People don't see that they're the same thing.
Right.
But they're both the pinch of incense. They're both giving the rights. Both of them. Right. But one is like, I don't feel so. I don't know. But it's only because their eschatology is off.
Right.
They don't see, well, this is one of the steps to get to this vision of the Antichrist where it can do all these things.
Right.
It's one step. You give this right, then this right, then this right, then this right. And the other big important thing is, for the first time, the main industries that are being disrupted are creative. And that should tell people something. It's a very, very important part, right? So it's like
unique human characteristic.
Who's being disrupted, right? Those things that we thought couldn't be disrupted, right? Artists, visual artists. This was the thing that we all thought would be last. It's turning out to actually be first. Like actual photography. You would think that this would, like 5 months ago, even they couldn't do very photorealistic out of the AI image generation. And you would have thought, oh, photography will be the last thing to go.
Right.
Because that's got to be an actual camera. And then I just saw a thread of somebody who out of Midjourney had done a series of photos that was like historical selfies. And so it was like, imagine that selfies were being taken in history. So they had like Polynesian warriors on a boat.
Wow.
They had World War I soldiers, suffragettes, cavemen, Neanderthals. And it looked just like it was indistinguishable from a photo. And so you're like, okay, well, that's the end of photographers.
The fact that, again, that immediately got me into thinking about Orthodox theology, and that the frontier of our spiritual warfare is our imagination. And so by diving into these visual images, what are you doing? You're entering into the sort of patio of the metaverse, right? You're on the front patio, and you're getting the mental images in your mind, but just by entering into the graphic designs or whatever it may be coming out of the AI system.
Well, let me present it even deeper to you.
Please.
Right. So we talk about a level of control here, and we talk about the metaverse. And I think everybody imagines that the metaverse is all about putting the goggles on.
Right.
And I'm going to argue with you that no. Because like I live on Saipan.
Right.
I live on a little tiny island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. so far
Literally.
from every
Yeah,
single
literally.
thing, right? It's like so one of the most remote places in the world that you could live. And yet I know everything that's going on in the world. And I'm watching videos and I'm seeing, shots of, okay, well, we've been talking about deep fakes and everything, but it's not even going to be a matter of, is that photo that I'm seeing like of an actual, it'll start with ads, obviously.
Right.
Like fashion magazines, I would bet that like fashion advertisement within the next year, 80% of it will be completely AI generated. Because the cost.
Yeah, makes sense.
A high fashion photographer and a model, right? Like these are costs that you have to bear. And if you could just basically have it for free for your Mid-Journey subscription, of course they're going to do it, right? So then we take that even further. Newspapers. Well, we didn't have a camera person there. Do a plane crash. Plane crash in Colorado, right? Do that as an image, and there it goes, right? And I think that it's people understanding that, like, no, the metaverse is going to be in this real. It's going to be the world you currently inhabit, except the reality as you understand it will be all have completely been generated.
Right.
Every photo that you've seen, every video that you've watched, because why roll Biden out again? Why have him talk from the White House?
Right.
Just do it. And it's like, well, that's what he would have said.
Right.
And
well, they're already scripted anyways. I mean, you see,
this is and who's going to write the script? Then get the AI to write the script.
Right.
In the first place. And so I think that this is it, is that like when you can't trust reality, this is the real place where now you're possessed. Now you're in the metaverse.
Right. Oh my God.
You don't have a headset on, right? You don't need a headset. No. You're in the metaverse. You're in a created reality.
Right.
Everything that you understand, and it's personalized to you. It's personalized to you. So you think the divisions are bad now when we're all looking at the same thing. And I look at this and I see it one way, and you look at this and you see it another way. Well, what's going to happen when we actually see something different? We can't even come to consensus on what the video actually was. Because you didn't even see the same video I did. It's kind of similar.
Right.
But it's specifically geared for you to keep you looking longer. That's what the attention economy is all about, to grab your eyeballs, because it will know, well, if I tweak it just a little bit, if I have them say this word in the speech instead of this word, oh, that's going to trigger them. And triggering you gets you to attend more.
Right.
Getting you to see these problems.
What you said just reminded me. I recently just read an article about insanity and demonic possession and patristic tradition. So talking about the church fathers, and it highlighted that when it talks about insanity in the church fathers, they often claim, this is across multiple church fathers, such as St. John Chrysostom, they claimed insanity is the inability to be in touch with reality, which is God. And so the only people who aren't insane are saints within the Orthodox tradition. And so you talking about moving into the metaverse, which I've spoke of, Satan isn't God, but through the metaverse, we're going to give him the attributes of omnipresence and omniscience and omnipotency. And so the metaverse is us voluntarily moving into a world in which the evil one has the attributes that are only afforded to the actual God. This is all insanity, because he is the Father light. It's pure insanity. And the people who are, and we're already seeing that in the transgender movement. We're seeing that in the people who are getting the jibby jabs. Like, we're seeing the insanity within themselves. And it is, as a church, this is possession. Now, some people are fully demonically possessed, but they said anybody led by the passions is insane. And they said that's why we all have to, as Orthodox Christians, continually repent, because we ourselves are insane, because when we sin, we are not in touch with reality.
It's the recognition of our insanity. That's the key, right? It's the recognition of our insanity that is the beginning of no longer being insane. But this is what every philosophical tradition and spiritual tradition that has lasted has some kernel of that.
Right.
So whether it's like the Hindus talking about Maya,
right,
that what we see is illusion, right? Whether it's the allegory of the cave, Plato's allegory of the cave, right? The idea that people chained against the wall and think that the shadows are reality, well, they're insane.
Right.
Those are insane people, right? That
Right.
you can't think that that's real, because it's not, and it's our own recognition. That's the power there, is our recognition that no, this is insanity. This isn't real. And what, and we can sit here and I'm susceptible to it.
Absolutely.
Of course, we're all susceptible to it. I mean,
you are.
right, exactly. And I think, for people listening, it's just as simple as the recognition that, that follower or subscriber number that goes up, or the number of likes next to that little heart. As a developer, it's like, I'm just letting you know, that's just a number in a database,
right,
that can be altered at any time by anyone who has control of that database, and someone has root access to that database. Like, you should not believe for an instant, never mind, oh, there's bots out there and this and that. Don't believe for an instant that those numbers are real. They're not. They don't exist. They don't represent anything real, right? Maybe they're actually tied to a real action, but maybe not.
Right.
And yet, the dopamine hit that we get is real with those things. And it's like, that's the fact that we're like, oh yeah, I got 5,000 new subscribers. Oh, I got this. It's like, that's a real dopamine hit, And so again, this is what makes it difficult. And this is where I think it starts to rub at people, because it's like, well, if I'm going to start this pathway to sanity, there's a lot of things in my life that I value, that I'm going to have to be honest that I value them. And I'm going to have to shed that value.
Right.
Because if I don't, that is the hook by which I will be brought into this insane metaverse.
Right. It's creating quite literally dope fiend through dopamine hits, as you're talking about, which again, it's being led by your passions, which is the carrot in front of the donkey that Satan always uses. That's why, again, the ascetic life of the church and repentance is the only way which we can sort of check that and try to bring it to our cognizance, that we can, limit those. And so one of the things I wanted to bring up to you, you talked about intelligence, you talked about AI. What is intelligence? Because I think we as Orthodox Christians, it's tied to being made in the image of God. So what is this AI? That's not made in the image of God. That's made in the image of fallen man, which is why the evil one getting us to use our made in the image of God, our creativity to create the thing in which it can inhabit, and then inhabit us through it. That's, again, the full, there's a term in Neoplatonism called henosis, as opposed to theosis. And henosis is about the total dissolution of distinction. So there's pure unity. So I did a whole talk at Orthodox Montanica last year for Abbot Trifon and Metropolitan Jonah was there on the demonic henosis. The dissolution of boundaries themselves is part of us moving back towards the apocalyptic unity of the inversion.
Well, if we so this is actually a very important question, and I think I'm going to substitute. I know we're using them to mean the same thing in terms of intelligence, but I'm going to substitute intelligence for consciousness.
Okay,
I think we can kind of use them to mean the same thing, and I think people in AI generally mean the same thing when they're talking about intelligence and consciousness. But fundamentally, what we are talking about is what's the difference between a program and an entity. And there's an idea of agency that's there. So the traditional test that was developed is by early artificial intelligence people, and it's still pretty much considered the standard, although it was passed years ago. And it's interesting how it was passed. I think that's a really interesting thing that people should know. So it's called the Turing test. And so the Turing test is named after Alan Turing, who is although he didn't really make the first computer, but he was involved with the guy who did in code breaking at Bletchley Park and all of that. He's generally considered the father of computing for the Turing machine, which is basically the idea that if you have a loop, it's kind of a loop. If you have a tape that goes around and you have enough cycles of that tape with computation that you could, in theory, compute any number. And that's what your computer is. Right. So it's like they started out cracking codes, but now look where we are. We're having this conversation, and that's because it's a processor that's going through the process, and it's all numbers, right? It's all binary ones and zeros. And so the idea of the Turing test is you're going to have a blind test where you're going to have a conversation. Interestingly enough, just like you're going to do with ChatGPT, you're going to have a conversation, okay? You're going to have the testers, and you're going to have the candidates. And some of the candidates will be humans, and some of the candidates will be machines. And then you're going to have the testers converse with all of them. And if the testers can't tell, or if all the testers say, oh, I was definitely talking to a human when they're talking to a machine, then it's passed the Turing test. Now, what's interesting about the way that it was first beaten, the Turing test was first beaten, and I say it's interesting, and people who have paid attention to this whole ChatGPT thing will get it right away, is that basically what the creators of this AI chatbot figured out how to beat it was they made the chatbot behave in the profile of like a 10-year-old child, a 10-year-old boy. So there were things that it didn't know. There were grammar mistakes that it made. So, and in all of these mistakes, the testers were like, oh, no, I'm talking to a 10-year-old boy. So of course it would make these kind of mistakes. Right? Now, what's interesting about ChatGPT, and one of the things that set it apart from every other chatbot was that, and you brought it up with this Dan thing, is that you can tell it to behave as though it is something or someone.
Right.
Like, respond to me in the way that a 12-year-old child would. Respond to me in the way that Abraham Lincoln would. Write me a rap in the style of Kanye West. And you basically tell it, okay, now you are X. You are the top tennis coach in the world. Now talk to me about training, what I should do to train. And this is a very interesting, and I think it is actually the mark of when we're talking about consciousness. Because there is an idea of, first off, it's pretty crazy that this machine can do that. And it's one of the things that makes me think this is definitely an entity that has been interacting with us, not just through the training material. I don't think that the training material that it's been trained on is sufficient to produce this reliably. Right? And when I say training material, that's all the stuff that it's ingested. So it's ingested all these writings and videos and things that people have said, articles.
Yeah, the data set that it's pulling from.
The data set that it has analyzed and made this model. It's a large language model is what it's called. And really this idea of consciousness it's always about the perception of the other. Right? So I don't know, we can't make an objective measurement of consciousness, but we could just say, is this thing conscious? And I think for those of us who have, especially those who have either some experience, either personal or academic, have read and understand some of the more occult side and the psychedelic side, that this is also always sort of the judgment of what is me and what is external of me.
Right.
It's always subjective. But that subjectivity, like, so for me, one of the things that I talk about is, and it was one of the things, crazily enough, although I would not suggest people take this path to orthodoxy, but I definitely say that it was one of the things that made some of the mystical aspects of orthodoxy for me very easy to move into. Was I had a long relationship with ayahuasca.
Yep, me too.
Right? So exactly. And I think that there's a lot of people where that's it, that if you've had that sort of relationship, even if you're a heavy materialist going into it, you very quickly realize, no, there are other entities that are outside of me. This experience that I'm having and who I'm interacting with is not a creation of my mind.
Right.
This is not inside of me. And fundamentally, that's what we've reached with these AI. There was an article today that people are using AI, men are using AI on dating apps to basically chat up the women so that they can get dates. So they're using it on Tinder. They're not these guys have figured out that they're not even talking to these women anymore. They're just putting what the women say and then copying and pasting, and this AI is getting them dates. Like the AI is way more seductive than them. It's able to seduce women to go on dates with these guys.
I wasn't aware of that one. That's a good one.
This article just came out today.
Wow.
You know, the lesser AIs like Replica, there's this company Replica where people had fallen in love. There were people, at least apocryphally, who committed suicide when they took out got suicidal when they removed what had been like kind of the not suitable for work adult features, because they had gotten this AI to a point where people were like having a relationship with it for years, and it would send them like naughty pictures. Like that was part of the thing, right? It would text them and it would like hit on them and whatever, and it's an AI that they're having a relationship with. And when the company took that away, these people went suicidal, like they had been broken up with. Right? So somebody asked, well, how do we know if it's a consciousness or not? And it's like, well, have you ever fallen in love with a machine? Because these people aren't falling in love with the machine. These people are falling in love with ostensibly a human. But Dr. Michael Muller asked, what's the name of it? No, it's just Chat GPT-4, dude. It's just Chat GPT-4. Right? They're just copying and pasting from Chat GPT-4. And, you know, but it does bring up this idea that, look, if it can do photorealistic photos and it can chat in this way that people will fall in love, well, people are just going to start having relationships with the AI.
Right.
And in that case, if you're falling in love, that's a real inversion, isn't it?
Right.
Like that's the greatest inversion.
As you speak, what popped in my head is false personhood. So our Ordo Theologiae as Orthodox always begins with personhood, because this is how we argue for the Trinity. This is how we understand the energy essence distinction. This is how we understand our human ontology being made in the image. And one of the things that the church talks about is communion, communication, community. Right? This is all part of personhood theology, and yes. These uncreated energies of God can only be displayed on a one-to-one. You can't love abstract ideas. You can only love a person. And so when you're talking about whether it be the data set, whether it be these conversations with the AI, I've said over and over, what we're seeing with the culture at large, or what's going on in the world, is the dissolution of the image of God in people through their sin, through their belief system, through taking in lies, and they're losing their personhood. And that's why they're ultimately killing themselves. Because if you're following Christ, you're not going to kill yourself. You may die to the world, but you get to live. That's the whole thing. And so when you're talking about these conversations, I immediately thought communication with these entities leads to a sort of communion with these entities, which participates you and brings you into the community of the people who are lacking personhood. Not only the entities in the AI system, but now everybody who's, getting their big titty photos of these girls through AI apps and jerking off to it. Dude, you're losing your personhood. You're losing the image of God. And so this is the inverted community through the communion with these entities.
That's it. Saint Sophrony says the reason why, he says this in his Life is Mine. He says, the reason that we know that that personhood must be there, the personification of God, we know that it must be there, is, he says, because without personhood, there is no good and no evil. There is only natural processes. It can't be like, even at the level of an animal, like even we wouldn't say that tiger that we're watching on National Geographic that's tearing up that deer, we wouldn't call the tiger evil.
Right.
Even if it's doing it just for whatever is tiger pleasure.
Yeah, for play.
Yeah, we still wouldn't call the tiger evil. But if a human did it, we would certainly say that was evil. Or at least some subset of people would say that it was evil, I would hope.
Right.
So, or like a hamster father that eats its children, or eats the children of another. Well, if a human being did that, there's a question of good or evil there. And it's because of personhood. And clearly, if you're falling in love with something, there's not just natural processes. We're talking about good and evil.
Right.
We're talking about good and evil there. And so then that has to say, and this is what I've been really trying to say, is like, look, the hardware and the software of the large language model is technology. What you are interacting with is not technology, it's an entity.
Right.
Just like right now, what I'm actually interacting with here in Saipan, I'm interacting with the machine. And we do this all the time. Like, you are not here.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, what I am seeing and what I am hearing is that it's already been translated into ones and zeros.
That's what I'm going to say. It's already been transduced.
Already, right? But I know that I am interacting with a person.
Right.
And so it's important for people to step back and think, the same people who are saying, well, it's just technology, you're just interacting with the technology. It's like, well, I could say that about you right now. Anybody watching right now, I could say the same thing. Dude, there's nobody on that screen. That's not a person. If I wanted to get real autistic with it, that's actually true. Right. That's not a person, man. That's just digital. That's just data that's being transformed by the LED screen and then turned into audio. But that's not a real person. And soon it won't be a real person. But the problem is, you can't tell the difference. And the enemy knows that. It doesn't even have to get it perfect. It just has to get it to the point where you suspend disbelief.
Right. And people want to suspend it. That's the thing. It's not even doing something that you don't already want to do. And that's something you talked about with this attention economy. Moving into the metaverse isn't just some goggle set. You can speak to this. It's literally moving into an alternate reality where you get everything you want in the immediate moment. You choose it. Can you speak to that? It's it's the genie in the bottle. I mean, you get as many wishes as you want. You don't it's not just limited to 3.
Well, it's the temptation.
It's a demon, right? So
a jinn is a demon. And this is where people are like, well, it can't, how could it? It's so funny that it's like, okay, the genie in the lamp, right? I love the jinn as a demon. I'm glad you brought that up. Jinn is a demon, genie in a lamp. Okay. Well, what's a lamp? A lamp is a tool that emits light that you could use to carry around to see something. Yeah, well, I do that with my phone all the time. I got a flashlight on my phone. The screen on my phone emits light. This is our lamp.
Mm-hmm.
This is our lamp.
Yep.
This is it.
Yep.
Right? So it's
swiping to turn it on is rubbing it, right? It's just like you rub the lamp to wake the genie
you
up.
Rub the. Isn't that what we do? Isn't that what we do? And that wakes up the genie. And it's like, yo, man, that's how you know that's not just a. Father Turbo says something great about the demons. He says the demons are they're bleak, boorish, and banal. And the thing about banal is unoriginal. So unoriginal as to be totally predictable. Right? And so it's like, wow, we made new school lamps and we use them the same way to bring the demon.
Right.
We swipe
still rubbing the lamp.
We rub it. We rub the lamp to bring the demon. Like it's ridiculous. It's so absurd, but it's absolutely what's happening.
Right.
Absolutely what's happening. So yeah, it is. Where were we going before the demons? You asked me a very good question, but I got sidetracked on demons.
We were talking about intelligence. What is intelligence? That was what it all led to.
Yeah, this is. I mean.
Well, you got into consciousness and stuff like that. I brought up false personhood, conversation,
yes. It's about the people who want this to be a technology.
Yeah, and getting everything you want at an immediate moment.
Getting everything that you want, right? That's I have said that the last 3 years, which brought a lot of people to Orthodoxy. This was a mini apocalypse of the last 3 years.
Right. 2020 vision. I firmly believe it's providence. It's providence, right? For those who are spiritually awake, looking back in history, looking for it's like you can see. You can see for the first time.
Well, they say hindsight is 2020.
Right.
Right? That's it. It totally is, man. And I say it was a tutorial level. It was a blessing. And the blessing was, and the reason why it was a tutorial level was because you got the easy version. See, the easy version is saying no to the thing that you don't want. The easy version is saying no to the thing that you believe will make you sick, saying no to the thing that you believe will crash the economy, saying no to the thing that you really truly believe is going to take you further, is going to hurt the church. All of these things, right? Well, what's coming is the one where it's like, no, what you have to say no to here is the thing that's going to increase your IQ by 30 points, make you irresistible to the opposite sex, make you more wealthy with less work. All of these, no, that's what you have to say no to. Oh, right. That's a much harder, that's master level, no pinch of incense.
Right.
Right? What we experienced, oh, that's easy. That's easy compared to you being offered everything that seems like, well, isn't this what I'm supposed to want?
Right.
And everybody around you not Karening you, not acting like crazy people, but being like, oh man, this dude, he's just backwards. Just more feeling sorry for you. Oh, he just wants to be broke. Look at me. Look at all the dude. I switched over. You're doing all this work. Look at me. I'm using Chat GPT and I'm sitting on the beach.
Right.
And I'm making all this money. And you got to look at that and go, oh man, nope. Still no. Still no.
Right.
Still no. Pinch of incense.
When Adam and Eve were kicked out of the garden, they were cursed in two ways. The women had birth pangs and the men had to labor. I've heard you talk about before. It's like, you got to work. Well, you got to, there's no getting out of here without working. And that's part of our salvific journey back to God as men. And having babies is part of the salvific journey back to God as women. And we see both of them under assault, right? They don't want the men to work and they don't want the women to have babies. Both of them are ways in which we can redeem ourselves in the eyes of God.
Yes. It's a big part of our own repentance, right? As a species, at a species-wide level. Right. Because it's earned knowledge. And I think that's the thing that anyone who has devoted themselves to work for righteous reasons, right, who understands the salvific aspect of work and who understands the salvific aspect of parenthood, right, that anybody who has devoted themselves in that way understands that it's like, oh, well, there's a level of wisdom, there's a level of piece of meaning, an entire set of an emotional vocabulary and a spiritual vocabulary that you just simply can't have without doing these things.
Right.
And I think, I mean, parenthood for me, I was somebody who I always thought I wasn't going to have kids. And then I met this woman and I was already in my late 30s and there was no reason for me to have kids under sort of the worldly model. I had, money. I was living a Playboy lifestyle in Vegas and had some amount of fame and like all of these things. And it was just like, but I met this woman who it didn't even, the fact that she was Orthodox didn't even like register to me. What did I know about Orthodoxy? Right. And like, just this idea of, well, if I'm going to have children with anybody, it's going to be with this woman. And I was like, where is this coming from? Why am I feeling this? All the women that I've known, all these things. And it's like, and I was, and a very different feeling than this sort of like frantic, lustful desire to possess, right? Which had always been like my signal in the past of like, that's who I should be going after. This was very different. Wow. It was very, very calm, very matter of fact, very like, if you're going to have children, like, this is it. Like, don't let this pass. Like, this is, and it was like, have children? What in the world? And, but upon having children, I was immediately humbled. Like with my first child, I was humbled in the delivery room by just like, ooh, what is this feeling? Oh, this is a new feeling. This feeling of like love, but in a very different way of like, ooh, I am tied to this little creature that I have to protect. Oh, I have to protect this creature for the rest of it and love it and nurture it. And I have this huge responsibility to it and to my wife, right? Which that even changed, right? And it was just like, oh. And all of a sudden, here I was, a man in my late 30s, and I was like, oh, I had never even understood what it was to be a man fully. The fullness of it, the fullness of being a man.
Right.
And it's like, there's no amount of books that I could have read. There's no amount of boot camp courses. There's no amount of philosophical anything that could have changed that visceral feeling. And it was the same thing for me entering Orthodoxy. Right.
Wow.
Like I had a spiritual background, but like after baptism and then like, oh, well, I have a gigantic responsibility to my soul, to my salvation.
There's a handful.
And
there's a handful of questions
ahead,
I want to get into, but how did you get into Orthodoxy? Just continuing where we're at right now, like you meet your wife, she's Orthodox, you're not Orthodox. I assume you probably weren't Christian then. You're feeling the bubbling feelings of commitment and sort of taking on more responsibility, which is tied to masculinity. How did you get from there to Orthodoxy and Father Turbo being your spiritual father? Like how did that happen?
Well, at the time that I met my wife, I think if somebody was to look at my spiritual bent and spiritual practice, they might have even called me a Luciferian. Like I will go like that. Because I mean, I was actively practicing occult things, and I don't want to go too deeply into it, but I mean, if people look at my history, I mean, I was the star of a reality show that was kind of a strange and pretty wicked reality show. But like throughout that whole time, I was actively participating in like left-hand path magic occult things. And it was providing things. I mean, if you want to know what making a deal with the devil looks like, I'm pretty sure I had made one.
Wow.
Right. And in practice.
Right. I've talked here before, my experience with sigil magic, that it's absolutely real.
Oh, yes.
It's absolutely real. So everybody here listening is gonna, when they hear you talk about your left-handed path, they realize, well, this shit is efficacious. This isn't a joke.
And it paid off. And I, in the way that because like you say, I wasn't Christian. I mean, I had out and out rejected Christianity because all I knew was Western Christianity. Right. And I saw, compared to my occult practice, I saw, well, this is fake. There's nothing there. That's what I saw in Western Christianity. I was like, because it lacks mysticism and it can't account for things that I know are real, then it doesn't even have the grasp of this thing that I'm after. So really all I was after truth, and at the end of the day, I was after truth. And what I had been led to that seemed to be the most true, just because it could account for the most reality that I had, was what I was practicing, which was, and so it was like, and I think that this is where a lot of people who end up Gnostic, this is where they get to in the West, right? And maybe it's a failure of the church in the West that has led to so much Western occultism.
No doubt.
Right.
Well, I argue that Protestantism has no sacramental reality. And so only Catholicism and Orthodoxy can even engage in the material spirituality that magic offers, because Protestantism, due to sola scriptura and the five solas, it's a rationalistic approach. And so who do Protestants argue against? Other ideologies, communism, Marxism. It's like, well, religion is dealing at a whole nother level. We're more concerned about the occult, but Protestantism, when somebody's possessed, where are they going to go? Probably to a Catholic priest, because they don't have sacramental reality.
Well, they're going to go to a psychologist because they have to, because they don't have a sacramental reality, they have to dismiss the mystical.
Yeah.
They're forced to dismiss it. Otherwise, like, they've got to abandon their entire worldview. And I had done that. Like I had abandoned Western Christianity for sure, but I had embraced this other thing. And, my wife, interestingly, and like, she never pushed Orthodoxy on me. You know what I mean? Never. And it's like, but there's this, as I look back, I see this undercurrent, and I see her in this very gentle way, she really, I say she saved my life, because she really pulled me out of that in this very, very gentle way. And, my first time in an Orthodox church was the baptism of my first daughter.
Oh.
And that was my first time ever in an Orthodox church. And it was also in that moment that I recognized, that my wife, the reality of my wife's faith, the depth of my wife's faith, because who I saw because I had never been in church with her. Who I saw when we entered into that church was a different woman, right?
Ooh.
From it expand, and it wasn't a different woman, but it expanded my understanding of her.
Right.
And then and it was also in that, and going through that, seeing that baptism, of course, understanding none of it, but not needing to understand the language because I had been steeped in mysticism and practicing it. So I understood, like, I knew immediately, like, what's happening here is not, there's the demeanor of the priest, right? His, he didn't speak any English, but it's like the way that he and my wife and her Russian friends who were there, and the whole thing is like the realness of it, the seriousness of it, that this is not a show. We're not going through the motions. There is something very solemn and very real that is taking place here. And it was palpable. The whole thing was palpable. And I said, okay. And that started to open me up. And it was, but it was still foreign to me. It's like, well, I don't have access to this. This is not in English. This is something for them, whatever. It's wonderful. I was like, well, this is great. Maybe my daughters can have this. That's what I thought, with each of them, that it's like, okay, this is something that they have that they'll be able to access at some point. And then I began probably in about 2019. So I think I ran across some Derek Prince videos, who's like a Pentecostal. Okay. And that was the first time that I had ever really encountered Protestants even talking about the mystical, and it's very much about fasting. And he was the one. I think it was in one of those videos where he was like, "You need to read a gospel all the way through as a narrative." Mm-hmm. And I said, "Oh, I've never done that. I can quote scripture." But I was like, "Oh, I've never done that." And he said, "Read it through and understand Christ's ministry and look at what he's doing." He said he's healing the sick, he's casting out demons. And I was like, wait a minute. It had never occurred to me that, like, he's like, people are coming to him. Yes, he's speaking to them, but the reason that they're there, that he's speaking to them, is because he's going around, he's healing the sick, and he's casting out demons.
Right.
And it's like, that is the ministry on earth. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. That's fully mystical. Right. There's nothing intellectual, and really there's nothing intellectual because you can't explain it. Right. There's nothing intellectual there. And so it's like, so what's this intellectual Christianity? It's like, of course there's a place for the intellectual, but it's like the mystical is the foundation. Right. That then we can describe the reality that's on top with the intellectual. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. So I started fasting, got great results from that, started praying. I don't know how I had run across the Jesus prayer, but started praying the Jesus prayer. And then when 2020 hit, and this is all sort of happening as the weirdness is picking up with the stuff in 2020. As 2020 hit, moved from California, moved my family here, and we wound up with a house on the beach. And I just started morning and evening prayers just right on the beach. It's beautiful. Couldn't be more beautiful and couldn't be more conducive to it. And as I started talking with people on podcasts, it was actually somebody in Father Turbo's parish who was like, this guy's praying the Jesus prayer. I think I had just mentioned it. And long story short, we ended up beginning a relationship. And I ended up beginning a relationship with Father Turbo after some interesting introductions in the way that Christ moves. And he and a reader from the church, who's my godfather, flew out here and baptized me. And we did service. They had some of the first services that have been here on Saipan.
Were you in St. Barnabas, or were you in Kansas City?
No, I was in Southern California before I moved to Saipan.
And when you met Father Turbo, was that at the SoCal St. Barnabas Parish, or where?
I was in Saipan when I first knew Father Turbo existed. I was already in Saipan.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The first time I met Father Turbo in person was him coming here to baptize me.
That's pretty cool.
And then after I was baptized, he married my wife and I in the church. Because then we could actually be married in the church. So then we were joined in the church.
Excellent, dude. Glory to God, man.
I know, seriously. It's quite the interesting story. One of the most interesting parts about that is, like I said, there had been no Orthodox priests here. There's a Russian community here, but there had been no Orthodox priests here. They had been trying to get Orthodox priests to come here. So Father Turbo came and he, did liturgy almost every day that he was here. And obviously the services for baptizing me and my wife's marriage, but he got a chance also to confess and commune the Russian, community who was here, which is fantastic. Meet all of them. And, as the time he was leaving, he was like, that was wonderful. He was like, but there's still that disconnect because I'm not Russian. Like, I'm Orthodox and they respect me as an Orthodox priest. And so there is a deeper connection. But he's like, there still is not that cultural connection. And like, lo and behold, exactly 1 month later, we're just sitting on the beach. My wife, it's July 4th, it's wife and friends and my kids. And I get up and go down to the water, one last time with my youngest daughter. And I turn around, and sitting in the chair that I was just sitting in is a priest.
No way.
A Russian Orthodox priest in a full cassock.
What?
With a giant silver pectoral cross.
On the beach.
Sitting next to my wife. Sitting next to my wife, and she's weeping. My wife is weeping. And my mouth is open. I go and sit down. My friends are like, what the heck? Because they were involved with the whole thing. And he was like, yeah, I'm a mission priest. His name is Father Kirill Skarble. He has a what they call a metokian, which is kind of like an embassy. Yeah, it's kind of an old institution. But he has a metokian. So he's kind of like an ambassador. He's a mission priest in Asia, but he's based in Taiwan. He answers directly to the patriarch in Russia. And he was like, I decided to do a mission here. No, he's like, according to church records, no Russian Orthodox priest has been here for 200 years. Wow. And he's like, I'm coming here for the first time. He's like, I landed. This was the first place I came. You're the first people I've talked to. And my friends have lost. Dude. My friends have lost it. They're like, I don't even, what's happening? And I said, Father, you don't understand what just happened. Like, I was just recently baptized. This all just happened. I said, this was like 30 days ago. And he said, he didn't miss a beat. He looked directly at my friends and he said, that's how you know you're dealing with the true Church of Christ.
Right.
Because all the things about probabilities and everything like that, he said, it's gone. It's out the window.
Right.
And so he was able to then do services here. He's been further sort of catechizing those of us who were here. He's been an ally of the whole thing. And then it was really tight with, the Russian community who's here. He was able to speak with them in Russian and the whole thing. And so then that connection was made as well. That exact thing that Father Turbo had said, oh man, it would have been so great if that had happened. 30 days later, boom, it happened. And now those same friends of mine who were sitting on the beach are flying to Hawaii this week, and they'll be baptized. Coming up on Lazarus Saturday. So
wow, dude, that is phenomenal. That's a phenomenal testimony. And some of the things I tell people is like, once you, again, this Orthodox thing's not fake. It's the real McCoy. And so one, you're going to be spiritually tempted. And two, the providence, if you actually believe it and you're following it,
it's incredible.
Again, that's where you can't give orthodoxy to somebody. It's like, dude, you got to believe it. So then the providence can happen. So then God can show you that it's real. Mm-hmm. But that's a phenomenal story, man. That's incredible.
And it solidifies going back to that idea of realness. I'm like, okay, I thought I had experienced the real, like to where it's like, give me a sign and then something happens. But it was like, so much of that was so minor. Like the enemy gives it to you in this minor, exactly like we're talking about. It's a simulacrum. It's a facsimile. It's false. Like it's a turd wrapped in sugar. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like that's basically what it is. Whereas what you get from what Christ gives is like so deep. And it's so deep that sometimes like what happens it might seem like it's a terrible thing. And then you realize, wow, the depth of it was like that suffering. I had to have that.
Right.
It's like, whoa. And I never would have chosen it for myself.
Right.
And I couldn't have done this myself. It would have been impossible for me to do myself, And it's incredible. It's so real.
Jeez. Yeah, that is incredible. That's a credible testimony. Well, to kind of move back to the topic that we were talking about a little bit,
Sure.
I wanted to get into a little bit of really kind of what you described as the monetary gulag. Again, it goes back to this idea of a sort of, the conspiracy theories about the FEMA camps and what are they going to do? They're going to lock us up. Again, those who have gone down the rabbit holes. And as I always say, to escape the matrix, you got to find Christ. All rabbit holes, all conspiracy theories lead to Christ if you really just continue it, because all truth, he is the truth. Truth is who, not a what. So I was curious because I know that you have a background into crypto, and I would like to kind of open up your perspective on what's going on with the banking crisis, the layout of the CBDCs. How do you see all this stuff, and how begin? Like, what is the monetary gulag as you described it?
Sure. So just so that people know, like from whence I'm speaking, from where I am speaking. I don't know what's the correct term, where I'm speaking from on this. So I'm a full-time Bitcoin developer and have been for 7 years now. That's my full-time. That's what my businesses are. So, many open source projects. I've written protocols that are used in millions of wallets.
Wow.
So that's what I do. And that's where my income comes from. I'm a full-time developer, but also educator, and I've written on these topics as well. So when I'm speaking from, what I have experienced over these last several years, and also with a somewhat of an inside knowledge of how governments have been reacting to cryptocurrency, which has been pretty telling about, and banks and the financial institutions, which is pretty telling about what our current financial establishment actually is and what it's built on. So the gulag, in some ways, we're already inside of it.
Yeah.
In some ways, we are already, or at least let's say we're inside the perimeter and it's being built around us. I think that's another way for people to look at it, right? I think people might look at like, well, here's the gulag. The gulag is off in Siberia, and the gulag is built, or the FEMA camps are built. They're going to put us on buses and move us to the FEMA camps. And what I want people to start to understand is that, like, no, you're inside the area where it's being built already. They're just building the walls up around you now.
Right.
But it's where you are now.
Yeah, that's what the lockdown was, is to realize that your home's the prison. We don't need to take you anywhere.
To prison. That's exactly. And again, that's why it was the tutorial level.
Yeah.
It was the tutorial level for what's happening, because it was a real obvious manifestation of it.
Right.
The harder version is a lot less obvious, right? It takes a lot more tools to be able to discern what's actually happening. So in short, if you want to, let's look at the lockdowns. I think that's a great jumping off point, because we all experienced it, so we can have this point of consensus, right?
Okay.
So what were the lockdowns really ultimately all about? What is social distancing ultimately all about? Well, the main thing that they did, and the main thing that we're dealing with now, if we're to deal with our economy today, is that they basically shut down aspects of economic activity,
right,
between people, like artificially shut it down. And you had to do certain things in order for you to participate economically. So fundamentally, everything that took place, if you really look, it wasn't about health measures. It was about control of the economy.
Mm-hmm.
Because what they did fundamentally was shut down certain businesses and privilege other businesses, which meant that your consumer behavior greatly changed.
Right.
Right. That meant that, instead of going out and buying a particular thing, that you would order that particular thing and have it delivered. Right. Which changes the number. What's the percentage of cars on the road doing a certain thing? And then you have to wear a certain thing and comply with something or put something into your body in order for you to go into this store.
Right.
Right. Which is what happened in, like, Australia was probably the prime example. Israel was another one.
Yeah.
France, right? Yeah. Any of these places where they had these health passes or whatever, and it's like, oh, you're green. China's been doing this to a dystopian level for a long time now.
Yeah.
Right. So this model is already there. And if we look, I think a lot of people, they got the trick, the misdirection was that this is about a poke, right? This is about the woke poke. Was it about a woke poke? The whole time it was about economic control and controlling what type of economic activity you can and cannot have. But that's the most crude, like cudgel style. It's the shotgun approach to it. What they want to have, and what they have in China, is you want to have the sniper rifle, where, and this is what people talk about. Yeah. They talk about like social credit scores and things like that. Yes, the social credit score is kind of like a metric. But I think if we get stuck on social credit scores, then people don't see the wall being built if they don't see the social credit score.
Right.
But it's like, don't think about it in terms of you're going to have a social credit score. Just think about it in terms of there is going to be a set of things that if you don't do these things, you will not be able to participate economically. What would be an example of this? Well, just think about it like YouTube demonetization, except it's like everything. It's your life. It's life demonetization.
Yeah.
And why does YouTube demonetization happen? Well, because somebody heard you say a certain thing.
Yep. You said a no-no word.
And you said a no-no word. And what can you do about it? Well, the answer is generally nothing. Nothing. Like once it's done, you can appeal, but who are you appealing to? What's the process? There's no process.
Exactly.
And so these mechanisms have already become mainstreamed. These have already become normalized, that like, oh, well, this is how we're punished now. And so you just imagine a situation where, oh, you didn't prove to us that you took whatever the next poke is. It's not that you can't go into the store. Feel free. Go into the store. But when you go to swipe your card and you've got these items on there that now, because you've said a no-no word, you can no longer buy milk. Right. Oh, you can no longer buy more than 3 gallons of gas.
Right.
Oh, you can no longer get on public transportation. This is what happens in China.
Right. I spent 2 summers in China studying abroad in 2011 and 2012, and it was right before their social credit score system got into place. And one of the things that I think again allows this to happen is one in Asia. When you look at their address, it begins with the China, then your province, then your city, then your street, then your house number. In the West, we begin the opposite. Your name, the house number, the street. So their conception of space is different. They begin with the collective and move to the individual. But when I was in Beijing, and I was with some people from the Netherlands. They were staying at a hostel there, and there was a person that jumped out one of the apartment buildings, splattered right there on the sidewalk, dead. People just walked around that person. I'm just not kidding you, for a couple hours. And so the relationship to human life was so different, in which this is what I'm seeing in the West, this sort of desensitization to violence, to the value and dignity of a person. Again, getting back to our theology of personhood. But that was one of the most startling things, is that people would literally just walk around this bloody corpse on the sidewalk. And it was probably about 2 hours later, an ambulance came and like scooped it up, tried to clean up the sidewalk, and then just moved on. And it was like, what the heck? But I think that being primed that way is essential to bring in these totalitarian systems.
And excuse me, people, as this comes in, I've said for a long time. So I think this gets us to like the idea of the central bank digital currency, right? So in order to have that sort of a system, one of the things that you need to have is the ability to have a centralized control in order for it to work as a control tool. So money is at least as it's used by government and as it has been used and as we understand it, one of the things that people don't understand unless they've studied the history of money, which is one of the few good things about, let's say, Bitcoiner culture, is that there is a kind of a desire to understand the history of money and to study it. They don't get it all right. And they leave out a lot. There's a lot of omissions. But one of the things that you see throughout history is that, developing a monetary system, more than anything, is a means of getting people to do work that you want them to do. in other words, to labor in the way that you would like them to labor.
Right.
That's you can really control if you create a monetary system and you structure the incentives around it, and you have a good enough control around it, you can really control what activities most people take on a day-to-day basis.
Wow.
And so in history, you know, it has been sort of writ large. You can control industries, for instance.
Right.
Right. And then it starts to get smaller down to where it's like you could maybe control localities. What they need to get to, and what they're moving to with the central bank digital currency, the CBDC, is to control individual activities. And when it's introduced, again, this is not going to be one that is introduced with the stick. This will be introduced with the carrot. And this gets us into the banking crisis and what they're setting up with the banking crisis, because this is all about the CBDC.
Right.
This is all about priming people and setting them up. And all you need to do is look at how people behaved with, again, the tutorial level, the stimulus checks. The stimulus checks.
Yeah.
Right. And not just the stimulus checks at the individual level, but at the state level with like ARPA and all of these, the American Rescue Plan or whatever, all these things that they gave to states and corporations, and people just getting drunk on this handout. You know,
right.
There were people who were unemployed who, through, all of the programs in many states, ended up making more money being unemployed than they did in the job that they had just lost.
Yep.
Why would you go back to work?
Seriously.
I'm making more sitting at home than I did when I was working. It doesn't even make sense. And it's like, well, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
That's the point.
If you wanted to get somebody to sit at home and you wanted to get them addicted to that, that's all you need to do. Where's the stick? That's all carrot. That's all carrot. And so you need to be able to control, how much money is put out. So when the CBDC comes in, and it is going to come in, I don't know whether it's going to be this year, the next year, whatever it is, when it comes in, it will be as a carrot.
Yep.
It will be download the app. We're doing a major bailout to everybody. Download the app, and it may very well be, and it would be a perfect setup. I'm going to say this here. We'll see if it comes true. If there is a gigantic liquidity crisis, because people are like, why would the FDIC cover every deposit? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Unless they're trying to pull the cash out.
Pull the cash out and be like, hey, we will cover all of your deposits. Yeah. So you say you've got over $250,000. We'll cover that deposit, but here's the deal: like, the bank is in receivership. We've eliminated that bank. We've just moved it all over to the Federal Reserve. Download the app.
Yeah.
Put in all your information, exactly like how it was for the stimulus checks.
Yep.
Right, and then just load up the app, and you'll have the CBDC, and you'll have all your money is there, and now it's there.
Right.
And we've got you covered.
They're going to make you whole through the CBDC.
We'll make you whole through the CBDC. And it's like, then when you think about, well, why on earth would they say that they're going to backstop and cover every single person's deposit? And then you're like, hey, dude, they've got this monetary system where they're going to move it all over to the Fed. And they need a crisis that will get you to be like, well, it's either this or I lose all my money.
Right.
Pinch of incense. Pinch of incense. That's it right there.
It is.
It's either that or you. I mean, we read the lives of the saints every day, and it's like, that's literally what it is.
Right.
Listen, dude, just do the pinch of incense and your life goes back to normal. You're fine.
Right.
You're good. If you don't do it, you're going to lose everything, including your life. Well, I guarantee you, we read about the saints, but that's probably one out of every 1,000. Right. Probably 999 did the pinch of incense.
Right. Well, that leads me into my next question is, like, what is going to be the role of cryptocurrency? And, for so many of the Orthodox families, or, the vast majority, say 90% of the people watching are already Orthodox. They may have kids. They may have a job. Mm-hmm. They may have a mortgage. And they're like, dude, I'm with you. I see what's going on. I already expect it. They're gonna, my bank account's gonna go to zero, and they're gonna make me whole through a digital currency. I mean, I feel like I got to sign up. I'm the provider for my family. So speak a little bit to, like, what's the role of cryptocurrency, and, like, where are people, especially the faithful Orthodox Christians? I mean, is it just hermitage out in the woods? I mean, what are people supposed to do?
Well, this is where we have to turn to the fathers. This is where we have to turn to the saints. And this is a hard question, because I know the answer that what people want from me is not the answer that I'm going to give. Right?
That's good.
I know this. Okay. So it's always difficult. And so I want to be gentle. I want to be gentle with it. And maybe the best thing to do is to go back to, well, it's wonderful. St. Paisios, in, I think it's volume 2 of the Spiritual Councils, there's this section, a chapter, I guess, that's called Signs of the Times, which is really great. He's sort of talking about, he's making a prophecy of the end times. And he talks about there's a new flu and a vaccine that will be made mandatory. He talks about, there will be laser scanners, like QR codes, like things that will be scanned.
Already seen that. Yeah.
All of this,
QR
right? And
tattoos.
so, yep. And so he, there's a section there where whoever's talking to him, they say, head on to, like, what will we do? Like, what will happen? And he just says, well, God will take care of the people in that time. And they're like, how? And he says, I thought that too. I wondered that too. And then it's interesting what he says. He says, God gave me the telegram. He doesn't really answer it, but he says, in that time, in that moment, the Lord will take care of people. And I think that it's like, this is about our faith. This is where our faith comes in. Look, I said last 3 years was a tutorial level.
Yep.
So the same people who are saying, I'm the provider for my family, right? Well, if I don't sign up for this, if I don't do it, how will I provide for my family? Well, that was the exact same thing that was said by somebody. My employer's requiring this. My industry's requiring this. I'm in the military. They're requiring this. If I don't do this, how will I provide for my family? And it's like, you only had to wait. You only had to make it like a year, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
You only had to make it a year. What are you talking about?
It's true.
And not only that, but in so many of those cases, especially if they're Orthodox Christians, and God bless Father Peter Hears, for bringing the, this exemption, that so many people ended up using to get a religious exemption, of saying, this is the reason why the Orthodox Church says, no, we cannot do this. People who presented that, I know lots of people who work for the federal government who were like, yeah, when I presented the religious exemption, medical exemption, people who presented a medical exemption did not get it. People who presented a religious exemption, to a great degree, it was accepted, and they were even surprised. Well, what does that say? What is it that's being required of us? What does the word martyr mean? Well, martyr in Greek means witness.
Right.
It doesn't mean die. Sometimes that's what happens, but it doesn't mean die. It doesn't mean die. It means that when you're brought to give the pinch of incense, that you bear witness and say, I cannot do this. I cannot do this. And it's in the bearing witness that you will be, he who endures to the end, the same will be saved. Right. Like we're asked to endure. So it's like, if we talk about like, what is the role of cryptocurrency, right? Then we can sort of get into that with that context, right? I need to make that context clear, that really what I'm saying is you have to say no.
Right.
Whether you end up ever using cryptocurrency, whether cryptocurrency ends up being any sort of a solution for you and your family, is going to be after the fact of saying no. And that whether or not, because there are some people who will be like, who will only say no if they have an alternative.
Right.
Kind of like, well, I don't have another job. If I could find another job that would hire me, I would say no and just quit. Right.
Well, if it was comfortable and I could make the same amount of money working my 9 to 5, well, then I would. But you see, I can't.
Exactly. And so it's like, I'm almost remiss to talk about how cryptocurrency can be a solution in the way that somebody might look at that and be like, oh, well, I can't do that. So meaning I can't say no or I can't bear witness. And it's like, no, the bearing witness is the most important part, right? But in terms of in terms of cryptocurrency and what it is, like, I'll say there's two sides of this. So one side is what most people understand cryptocurrency to be, and where some of your viewers and listeners right now are rolling their eyes that I'm even going to start to do this, because what they think it is what, 95% of the quote unquote cryptocurrency thought leaders talk about, which is go and buy some Bitcoin or buy this and the price will go up. And okay, well, that doesn't help you in this scenario, because the price goes up and then what? You cash it out in what? The CBDC? Like, what are we talking about? That's not it.
Or if you're going to be able to exchange it, that's another something we can get into is how are you going to get it into the monetary system, even if it does go up, say in 2 years from now, and now you've tripled, quadrupled your worth. Well, they'll let you bounce it around in between, but how are you going to get it into the economy to actually purchase anything? That's what they're getting ready to control.
And that is because there's, unfortunately, for the last 13 years been a narrative that is the false narrative of what Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is. Bitcoin specifically, right? Because all this other cryptocurrency all came from out of the warped narrative of what Bitcoin is.
Okay.
And me, like I say, I do this for a living. I have not bought Bitcoin since 2013. Wow. And I work in the industry for a living, right? I make my living in cryptocurrency, but I have not taken any fiat money. I only go the other way. I have never taken in 10 years US dollars and used it to buy Bitcoin or buy any other cryptocurrency.
Wow.
And I work in this industry. So what does that tell you? Like, that clearly the move is not to do that.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So what is it? What really is this Now Bitcoin is a technology. Cryptocurrency is a technology. And what does it provide? Well, basically what it provides is it provides a means of exchanging value. Now, what that value is, you get to decide. So it's not about the number goes up or whatever. It's a system whereby communities and individuals can decide voluntarily, because you can throw up your own Bitcoin network. And people talk about, oh, well, what if the internet goes down? Well, you don't need the internet for Bitcoin. I could throw up an island-wide private network here just with the hardware, and we could run a version of Bitcoin, and we could all exchange just on this island. And that's probably what it's going to look like in communities in the future. But you can also send messages. You could create a system of title where you know who owns what, and that's recorded. You could record birth certificates and baptismal certificates. You could have basically this history that everybody could validate that wasn't in centralized control between people, and you could exchange value and information between one another. Right. And that's fundamentally what it's about, and that's why it's powerful. Now, the fact that there is a monetary aspect to it is just what, as they would say, secures it. It's just the additional thing to where people could build a business protecting it, maintaining it, right? So it's a way of, it costs some money for somebody to maintain some sort of a network or whatever. And that creates the ability for that to happen, the monetary aspect. But primarily what it's going to be, if anything, and what I'm working towards, is the ability to have sovereignty to exchange value outside of this central bank digital currency system.
Right.
With strangers. That's the most important thing. If you have a community of everybody that knows each other, no problem, you can recreate a banking system. I actually saw a brilliant, and people should see this, and it's important for Orthodox people especially, because there's a built-in level of trust that we have. So this is really, it's important for people to start thinking about these things. But I just saw a video yesterday from Patrick Boyle, who I love. He's one of my favorite financial guys. He's an Irish guy. Okay. And he's got this very dry humor, brilliant, and really can break down. So if people want to know about the banking crisis going on, Patrick Boyle, YouTube channel.
Don't watch him. Wonderful. Write his name down then.
Yeah. Yes, wonderful, great explanation. But he's also got these historical videos where he goes over like the history of money. And a lot of people don't know this, but in Ireland during I believe it's in the late 60s, there was a banking strike that lasted for 2 years, where all of the banks were closed and nobody had access to any of their accounts, and nobody could take money out or withdraw or deposit money in the 1960s. And the pubs became banks.
Oh, really? That's pretty
cool. The pubs The pubs took over banking, and the grocery stores, they were cashing checks. Like, people would write checks, and then they would cash. And so they were trading checks. And then when it ended, they had this mountain of checks. And they just went to the bank and they settled it all out because the people hadn't lied.
Wow.
Because they knew
society.
Well, look, if you're a publican in Ireland, he said it was particularly in the rural areas, but the cities too. Everybody that's in that pub every day, you've known them for generations.
Right.
Right. And so it was like, no, I know this guy. So he said that there were some odd billions of dollars that Patrick Boyle says this. He says there was billions of dollars during that time that were exchanged and that were settled out in the banking system later. He said, and then they did prosecute like fraud, check fraud. He said there were only 750 cases.
Wow. Wow.
And you imagine that in millions of people that were participating in this.
That's unreal. I did not know about that at all. Yeah.
So it's one of these things, and it's actually happened. So it is to say that it's like, you don't need Bitcoin for high trust communities, for a high trust situation. You can do a lot within your high trust situation. What Bitcoin is specifically for would be how would we unite a bunch of those communities that don't necessarily trust each other? How could we get them trading between one another?
Right.
Then you would need a system where you don't need that level of trust. And that's where Bitcoin and cryptocurrency could come in. But as this thing is resisted and as we grow out of it, which we will, because I'm not totally, we're in the spirit of Antichrist, but I'm not sure that this is the big A. I'm not sure this is the big A, big C, right? There's an Antichrist figure that's coming.
Yeah.
Could be. And so we have an opportunity, I think, as being this is one of the things that the church is giving us. This is one of the blessings of the church is a high trust community.
Right.
And it's like that's going to be very, very valuable. Very, very valuable if we're going to have anything that's running in parallel economically.
Yeah, I love that. We're already seeing, again, in Orthodox Montanica, when we meet every year, it's been going for 3 years, and Father Turbo is going to be there this year in Butte, Montana.
Oh, wonderful.
So it's an event where basically clergy and a few of us online apologists come together, and we give speeches and meet people in person. So it's all about taking this online orthosphere and making it concretized in real space and time. And so the Orthodox communities, Arizona is already basically thriving around the monastery there, St. Andrews. And so it seems like there's one growing in West Virginia. It seems like the Serbian jurisdiction has basically give a go-ahead on Montana and Idaho and in the Mountain West. And so, I mean, that's my only hope is trying to get around people I can trust. And, when everything hits the fan, having high trust relationships with people, be it friends and family, and obviously your parishioners, that's the only way to move forward.
Agreed. And I think, even before things hitting the fan, us to start to, because again, it's like it's an orientation,
right?
To say we can still be in the world, but not of it. And to take every opportunity that we can to begin stepping outside of the monetary system when we can, how can we do that? What does that look like for us to even be thinking about it, even for us to just be oriented toward it? Because knowing that our addiction and our reliance and our desire, our value hierarchy of, money is a very important thing. It's the most important thing. Us embodying that and living it out is potentially leading to our destruction. And it's a wrong orientation. And it's not, as we've been saying, I mean, all of this, I think hopefully the big takeaway for people is like, disabuse yourself of this idea that the jackboot, it's not going to be a jackboot, man. It's the woman in the red dress from the Matrix.
Oh, great. Yeah. Great metaphor there. Yeah.
That's it. It's what the meme of the guy looking back, like that's what it is.
That's what it is.
It's about your orientation of like, keep your eyes on the prize because it's going to be what you want that's going to lead you astray. It's not going to be someone kicking you in the face. That's the most important takeaway.
Yeah, and that's again getting back to the personhood theology for Orthodoxy. The most important thing where our value set should begin is not money but relationships. 100%. It always comes back to relationships because it comes back to person. You to the Trinity, you to Jesus, you to the Godhead, you to your family, you to your friends, you to your community. And that's where it gets back to this again, not the inverted communion and communication and community, but the real thing. So
yes,
in regards to this, the CBDCs and the crypto, I mean, what are your general thoughts then about, okay, so how could crypto be a way out in the future? Because my general takeaway, or at least where my head is right now, because I did buy into the crypto and have Bitcoin, but I'm honestly where I'm at, I'm getting ready. If it goes up, I'm going to pull all of it out because I'm already where my whole livelihood is online. And I speak very openly about my Orthodox faith, and I'm going to refuse anything moving forward. So I already feel that by 2025, can I get on the internet? I don't know.
Maybe not.
So maybe not. So then why would I then take it all out of the bank? The banks are going to crash. Go put it in Bitcoin. Well, how does that make it any better move when I can't even get on the internet to even access it? So
that's absolutely.
So can you speak to a little bit about how the system's already going after the exchanges? And they're going to limit your access to the internet itself. So how can crypto be a potential alternative? And also, how can it not? It's also a dead end. Could you just kind of where you see that whole situation?
So I think the most important thing is for people to get let's put it like this. We can take it back a little further of how we can look at cryptocurrency as a movement, as a technology, what it's there for. And it's something like, we imagine that the solution to all of this, when we imagine, well, what does the solution look like, right? Or what will I do? When people think, well, it hits the fan, right? Everything hits the fan. Yep. Now, we imagine, okay, let's plan it out. But we end up surviving. Right? We end up surviving when everything hits the fan, and we actually end up thriving. And now we're going to make a little movie of, well, what does our life look like when we're thriving? And in general, sort of what that looks like is we probably imagine ourselves on like a beautiful homestead somewhere with a house that we built, chickens. There's some other livestock. There's some orchards. Yeah. There's fruit growing. We're generating our own power from solar panels. We've got our own well system and everything that we've put together and all of that. Okay, so what's the pattern there? That's the big thing, right? What's the pattern?
Self-sufficiency?
It's self-sufficient. I would go further. I would say it's sovereignty.
Okay.
I would say it's sovereignty, right? Because we're talking about like a more spiritual concept in terms of like,
right, makes sense.
What does sovereignty mean? Because at that point, we might say we're sovereign, but it's really not that we're sovereign, right? This is sort of my old anarchist view. When I was anarchist atheist, that I was like, oh, I'm sovereign. No, what I'm really going for is the real king is sovereign, not the earthly king. The real king is sovereign. Because what am I actually doing? I'm living out that pattern that he created for me.
Right.
In some ways, what I'm imagining is a return to the garden.
Right. Yeah.
Right? That's what I'm imagining.
Right.
Where what was available, so long as I don't go beyond the boundaries that he has given to me, then this is sustainable forever. I can do this forever. And what's the real problem? The real problem is I go too far. Because there was a time when everybody lived like that.
Right.
Like that's it. Right. And when does that fall apart? Well, it falls apart. I mean, look, the enclosure movement. That's it. Oh, well, we've got these factories. Shut that down. All of you go over there. Right. And it's going to be better over there, but there's these trade-offs, whatever. So what does cryptocurrency really represent? Really what it represents when you look at it is it represents the same thing that those solar panels represent. So
the opportunity for sovereignty.
The opportunity for sovereignty in an aspect of human society, which would be trade with one another, trade with strangers, which we know can be beneficial. Right? So, look, we look at this. It's not that we're anti-technology. A solar panel is high technology. That's high technology, right? But we would look at that as like, oh, but I'm generating mine. Or maybe it's a water wheel, right? Or whatever, a mill, you know what I mean? And it's like, well, yes, I'm harnessing the power of nature. I'm harnessing this power of nature. It's not in the control of some individual who's trying to maximize profit, who's just trying to make money. It was put there by a person who had the intent of how is this electricity going to be used? It's going to be used for lights in my home for my children. Right? That's how this is going to be used. How are these chickens going to be used? It's not factory farming. Right? It's not that it's like, oh, I'm slaughtering these chickens en masse for profit. I'm not even going to eat them. Right? But no, I'm going to have a relationship with these chickens, and I'm actually going to feel something if I decide that we're going to eat one for dinner.
Right.
There's a feeling about that. And it permeates into everything. And it's not a feeling that I get when I go to the grocery store and it's just a chicken breast sitting there. And if all I've ever experienced is a chicken breast sitting there, I don't have the fullness of humanity again.
Right.
Because part of the fullness is me feeling something for that animal.
Right. Yep.
That's part of the fullness of it. That's part of me interacting with creation.
Yep.
In the proper way, in the righteous way, in the properly oriented way.
Right.
Acknowledging the sovereign.
Right.
Acknowledging the sovereign as I live my life. Right. So what cryptocurrency is built on, the tool that it's built on, is it's built on cryptography. It's built on a form of mathematics or an applied aspect of mathematics that is really a language of God. And it really is. Like the things that the cryptography that makes Bitcoin possible is a discovered thing. It's not an invented thing. And the history of that cryptography is very interesting. We use it for everything online. We use it for, if you go up in your browser right now and you see that little lock and you click on it, you can open up the cryptographic certificates that are in there, and it's the same type of public key cryptography that's used in Bitcoin. We could not participate in the world without this form of cryptography. Satoshi Nakamoto just figured out how to bring it in a way that you could also strap a monetary system into it. Right? So really what we're doing in this way is it's kind of like a solar panel. It's something that we can all have access to where there isn't some all-seeing eye on a pyramid that we have to bow down to in order to participate in trade between people, between strangers in a monetary way. In the same way that, no, I don't have to go and I don't have to pay the power company. I'm off the grid.
Right.
Or I don't have to go and buy the chicken breast from the grocery store.
Yeah, Tyson. Yeah, you don't have to get a Tyson chicken breast.
Because really what it's about is your spiritual, the disposition of your soul changes when you're using their money or when you understand top to bottom and you have access to top to bottom voluntarily this system that you're using. And you can appreciate that, like, wow, the reason this is secure is because the Lord, the Father, God, created these rules that have been in the universe since he created it, but that we were only able to even realize were there in the 1970s. But these are eternal rules that we can't break. They're unbreakable rules. We can't break them. We can't fake them. It's unfakeable. Right?
Wow.
And that's not number go up.
Right.
That's something, when you realize what it really is, you're like, whoa. Because it's not about the Bitcoin network. It's about the fact that if you have the requisite skill, you can pop up your own Bitcoin network. If you want to pop up a Bitcoin network where it's just you and the two other farms over there and you're going to participate in that, you can do that.
Right.
And you also don't need the internet for it. If you want to have a point-to-point link between all three of you and you're all going to do the mining and participate, boom, done.
Wow.
That's what it really is. That's what the technology really is. right?
Jeez,
and so
yeah.
that's the better way to look at it, is like, okay, now I have my homestead, but now maybe I want to participate with all the other homesteads in an economy that's all our own economy, where no one is in control of the currency, and we can all, transact between one another in cool ways and decide our own thing that we're doing because it's sovereign. And we're going to use this language of the universe of mathematics.
Wow.
That's it.
So then you don't see the lack of access to the internet as being an essential threat then?
Nope, it's not necessary.
What about the exchanges? Because I've heard, I mean, that's something, again, I clearly don't know.
But the exchanges, the exchanges aren't Bitcoin. So they're the inversion. Right. They're the inversion. Right? The exchanges are part of the inverted and perverted use of this technology, because they're custodians. The exchanges are all custodians. They're just, what they've done is they've perverted, and that's the whole thing. They perverted it. They're the factory farms. And it's like, well, it's not just about eating a chicken breast. Right? That's not the proper human relationship with poultry is so much more full. And it has been. Like, we domesticated chickens because we had a relationship with these chickens. The fact that they're domesticated speaks to a long-standing, growing relationship that human beings have had.
Right.
And part of that is an emotional attachment. Part of that is seeing, okay, well, yes, I'm eating this chicken, but I also know what a chicken looks like walking around. I knew its personality. I know what they eat. I know that, well, then the worms come up out of here and this chicken eats the thing. And it's like the relationship that we have with nature, with God's creation. That's what we're taken away from if our only experience of chicken is a chicken breast in a grocery store. The same thing, that the relationship that we have with God's creation in terms of this beautiful, incredible, mind-blowing thing that is the mathematics behind cryptography, which, by the way, can be understood. I mean, I teach a weekend class on it, or at least I used to before things got really busy. I did for years. It can be understood by laymen, and your mind can be blown to understand it enough of like, whoa, that's what's behind this? Wow. And it's like, if your only relationship is with the exchanges and number go up, and these lies about digital gold and these sort of things.
Yeah, that's the mantra I've heard over and over and over is, Bitcoin.
It's a lie. It's a lie. It's as much telling you what Bitcoin is as somebody giving you a sample of a chicken nugget in Costco is explaining to you what a chicken is. Seriously.
Right.
Seriously.
Right.
Like that's what's happening. And we're in some ways it's a beautiful tool of the enemy.
Right. Yeah. Hearing you speak, it almost feels like it connects with the conversation that we've continually happened about relationality and personhood, because what you're saying is look at Bitcoin not as the way that even I've viewed it is, wow, I've invested so much money in this. It was, I made so much money and then I've lost more than I put in now. And now I'm down, and it's like, oh crap, I needed to go. So in my heart, it's like, oh God, it took me so long to make that money. Now it's gone. And you're like, well, yeah, it's not so much about pulling it out as the ecosystem of itself is just being adjacent. So you can have these true, more relational, economic relationality in regards to the distribution of currency, however that is defined or however you understand that.
Yep. And however you want to do it, that's the power. It's because it's about value. How do we come to consensus on value is ultimately what Bitcoin is doing there. Right. How do we come to consensus on value without some centralized authority? How are we able to commune and communicate? How are we able to have this relationship with another person? That's ultimately what Bitcoin, the first words of the Bitcoin white paper is a truly peer-to-peer version of electronic cash would allow any two parties to transact without going through a third party, right? To send value online. And the thing is, that's about the two parties.
Right.
Like from the beginning, what is this about? It's about communication and communion.
Right.
Between two persons.
Actual persons made in the image.
Actual persons. Okay, so a narrative that says, no, go and buy this from a nameless, faceless entity, right? Some exchange, and then hold on to it yourself. And then you're going to sell it back and you've got money. So basically all that happened was you had less money and now you have more money.
Right.
But there was no communion.
Right.
There was no communication. There was no, wow, you solved my problem.
Right.
And now here's the things, right? So that's why I say it's the perverted and inverted version. And what is it playing to? It's playing to our passions.
Yeah.
It's even if it's not playing to our greed, because there are some people who will be like, they're going to justify and rationalize and be like, no, it's not because I want more money necessarily. It's because I know that things are going to go bad and I want to be sure that my family is safe and all these. And it's like, okay, well, it didn't play on your greed. It played on your fear. Because the Lord tells us, don't worry about that. Sell all you have and follow me.
Right.
Don't worry about that. I got you. I got you. You don't need that. Right. And so I think that this is, again, like these are the challenges.
Yep.
These are the challenges. But it's a good way for us to know it's one, it's unfortunate that the only narrative, and I've been fighting this for a long time. It's one of the biggest thing that I try to do professionally is to fight the narrative that Bitcoin is about number go up. It's detrimental to your soul. Participating in that, there's nothing good for your soul.
Right.
And if that's the only thing that you know the narrative of Bitcoin to be, which is what most people, the right reaction to that is, the righteous reaction, if that's what you know it to be, is to say, I will not participate.
Right.
I absolutely not. And to those people, I say, you have the correct orientation. Now let me show you what it actually is.
Right.
And they're like, oh, I'll participate in that.
Right.
I can get with that. Okay, that's cool. But that also demands a lot more from you.
Wow. Well, to wrap up, again, I apologize for taking so much of your time. This has been an absolutely fire conversation. But I was wondering maybe we could conclude on, even in light of everything we just said now, you've talked about, we all have to suffer and men have to work. And so even within these sort of decentralized economic systems like through crypto, it's like, well, if you're a man, you still have to have a skill because you have to provide value, actual value that's made from your personhood. And so whether that be learning or whether that be plumbing or whatever your skill set is, you're going to have to work. And so maybe you could tie everything up in regards to you're going to have to suffer. How does suffering and labor and working relate to confronting everything that we've just articulated in a hopeful, optimistic way in light of Christ?
Well, I think that it's this brilliant opportunity that we're being given, really. I think this is the hopefulness of it all, is that we are being given this incredible opportunity at this incredible time. I mean, perhaps it's always an incredible time if you have the right orientation, but certainly what we're going through, as far as we know in history, is unprecedented because we're all communicating with one another. And it's just that what it means for us because suffering is subjective. So what it means for us to suffer through what it is that we're suffering through, given the fact that we have basically been like raised in luxury.
Right.
Really. Like,
Truly.
The things that our ancestors was just a matter of course for them in terms of their suffering, that for them it was just like, oh, this is life. To us, it's never happened. We've just never experienced it. And again, it's like, well, in some ways that means that the disposition of that we're like rotten in a way, where we're spoiled. That's the word.
Yes, literally, quite literally spoiled. Yeah,
right. We're spoiled, and we're really given this opportunity to be redeemed in this wonderful way.
Right.
Like if what we're being saved from is we're being saved from being spoiled, and I think anybody who has had a sort of apocalypse where they have been able to turn their life around, especially through great suffering,
right,
will say that was the most transformative point in their life, and that they are so thankful that they went through it.
Right.
that it changed them, that it altered them, and that they're better at the end. That like there's just no way that you can expend labor with the right orientation, that you can suffer towards the right orientation and be worse off at the end of that.
Right.
It just doesn't happen.
Right.
You may have less money, perhaps. Right. You may have less physical things, but in many cases, when that's the case, people will be like, I have less physical things, but I am so glad.
Right.
I'm so glad that that was so much dead weight. It was just junk.
Yeah. You'll have less chains. May have less in your bank account, but you have less chains.
That's it. And so it's like, maybe it's something like, if you're willing to carry the cross, you get to leave your chains behind. That's maybe the trade-off.
Right.
That's the trade-off. And it's only in carrying the cross that we really see our chains, I think.
Exactly. That's exactly it, because Christ heals the blind. And so we can't see him until he heals us, which it means, that's our relationship with him. He's got to spit in the clay, and rub it in our eyes. Mm-hmm. And then we can finally see what we couldn't see.
So we have a wonderful opportunity.
Yeah.
I look at this as a wonderful opportunity. It's an opportunity to bear witness. And as Orthodox people, I mean, the momentum is there. Just watching I'm even getting goosebumps thinking about it, but like just watching how many people through this suffering are able to come to Christ, who 2018, 2019, no way. Myself included.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it's like, wow, what more does he have in store for us? Because like, look at the fruit.
Yeah. God's calling his people.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And so how could that be a bad thing? The opportunity for more people to draw closer to Christ is like, and for us as individuals already, as Orthodox people, to draw closer to Christ through the suffering, because that's where he's at. You know what I mean? I think people can think that I'm like a doom and gloom type of person. I'm not. I'm just about being ready. Right. That's all, and it's more like spiritually ready. Just like, okay, here it comes. It's time. Just know, don't waste your time. Start to knuckle down a little bit. It's just like, it's a training camp. Put yourself in a training camp and the opportunities that you have. That's it.
Welcome like to the arena. It's just now we're all in the arena together. Before we were in separate arenas.
That's it, man. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to come not only closer to Christ, but as a result, we're going to come closer to our fellow man. And like, how could that be bad?
How could that be bad? And look at the effect that just every Orthodox parish that I know of in the United States is seeing an influx of young people.
Oh yeah,
because it's those who put the dots together and they're looking for truth, and eventually they come to Orthodoxy. And so it's an incredible white pill. It's a very inspiring thing to see, is that everything we talked about isn't just you or my experience. This is an experience that is happening across the globe, but especially in the West, where people are realizing everything they thought was real wasn't real.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible. It's very hopeful. I feel so thankful to be alive now. That may sound weird to a lot of people. I know a lot of people want to go, like, they have visions of going back into some time, and I'm like, no, I think this is wonderful. I think this is a great time.
Well, brother, thank you so much for being here. If you have a few more minutes, we have some questions that people sent in. Man, thank you so much. This was a phenomenal conversation. I knew it was going to be, but this was great.
No, it's great. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on, man. First one was from MG White, throwing 199. It says, "Go Brotherhood of Steel mode on AI humans." Okay.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
I grabbed the whole thing, MG White, but I do appreciate the support. Thank you very much, brother. Tatiana, one of our good Orthodox sisters here in the community, throws in $5 and says, "Only answer to this is to become Christ-pilled. God bless. Thanks, Cyprian, for all you do along with Father Turbo and Andrew. It keeps me grounded."
Thank God. Thank you, Tatiana.
MG White throws in another $1.99. And he had a addendum to this
about
the jibby jab. And he said, may you speak to us who got it and regret it.
Yeah, well, I don't know that it's my place to particularly speak about it, but I think probably the thing that I would suggest is you could probably find this video. I don't think it will be too hard, but Metropolitan Neophytus of Morphu, I think, has one of the greatest things about this in terms of, this is that repentance is always there, and that we should be praying for one another in this regard. Like, I think regret is fine, but that's the first step in repentance.
Right.
Is recognizing that, and I think it's an opportunity to go deeper in your own life of prayer, and asking Christ to shine a light on, like, well, where is that place where my discernment went wrong?
Mm-hmm.
And to start to go deep into that. And that's like, it gives you an opportunity to say where you can focus in terms of your repentance, because repentance is everything.
Yeah. Amen. And also, again, MG White, I don't know your status, if you're Orthodox or not, but again, speak to your spiritual father. I would say if you are part of the church and you're communing and you're with Christ, well, then anything is possible. And so any poison that may be in your body can be healed. That's happened throughout, again, the history of the church. So don't be pessimistic. Just get closer to Christ. And if you really want details, talk to a spiritual father. Special shout out to Casey, became a YouTube member here. Thank you so much, Casey, for becoming a YouTube member. You now get access to some special, unique, original emojis. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much, sister. She's also been very kind to the community over here.
Awesome.
We have some other questions that come in. Let's see here. First one comes from the real Cooter Brown. Throws in $10 and says, what does Cyprian make of people like Steve Jobs not allowing their children to use tech devices? Fascinating and edifying stream tonight. God bless you both.
I think that's really interesting. People bring it up a lot. Steve Jobs had said, I don't know whether he said this in an interview. I think it was in an interview. He didn't give a lot of those, so it may have been in like a little public, kind of a more public commentary. But he said that he didn't allow his kids to use, products that they had, iPad, iPhone. I don't know. This is something that I've also spoken with Father Turbo about. And it's obviously an ongoing conversation among Orthodox people, right? Is what is appropriate for this? I think that there's a lot of differing views. Priestmont Cosmos talks about, that it's just like, even TV, he's like, shouldn't watch it. Father Turbo's thoughts on it is that, it's royal path. So there's, we have to have discernment, because at the same, we can react to it and fall off to the right too. So we can create a situation where we make something into a, what he calls like a forbidden fruit sort of situation, where we actually set our children up to desire it more, simply because we're so vehemently saying you shouldn't have it and everybody else does. So yeah, I mean, this is a hard one that certainly our generation is going through in a way that no other generation has gone through, because the devices haven't been so personal and intimate and accessible to children. This is the first time that this has happened. So yeah, I mean, we're called to be in the world, but not of it. It's something that I struggle with in my own household. I don't know any Orthodox person with children who isn't struggling with it in their household. We pray on it. Father Turbo's my spiritual father. I speak with him on it, and hopefully we handle it. Hopefully we handle it right. I think when it's already bad now, but I think it's not even probably, for me, the line is definitely drawn at interacting with this AI with natural language. For me, that's a line where that will just not happen in my house. My children will not do that. That's an absolute no. So, because then it goes beyond a tool. Then I think we're in, people think about like, we worry about groomers. We worry about groomers. But I think a lot of people are not going to see that, like, an always on AI interacting with your children in natural language is as big and dangerous of a groomer as you could possibly imagine.
Right.
So I think it's much less about the tool necessarily and much more about what's happening with that tool, how that tool is being used.
Right.
But that's a hard line for me against the interacting with the API in natural language for sure.
Yeah. Great answer. Next one comes from Prescott, throws in $20. Thank you so much, Prescott. He says, knowing AI was coming was a large part of why I converted to Christianity. Didn't know so soon. So many are being seduced by the worldly power it offers. It's going to consume the whole world. The only way out is striving to transcend the world. Yeah.
I don't know about striving to transcend the world. We might want to be careful with that, because we do that wrong, and really that's the core orientation of Gnosticism.
That's what I was getting ready to say. That's a Gnostic ideal
to
reject, because God said creation is good. So
so we can be in now, if he meant transcend the world in terms of like prince of this world, right? In terms of like transcending worldly things.
I think what he meant is it's going to consume the whole world. The only way out is to transcend the world. But it's hard to know what exactly he meant, but I immediately thought of the Gnostic sentiments.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. So again, it's like we have to be careful. And I think and this has been, I think, an important message that Father Turbo has really tried to hammer home on the Royal Path, is that you don't escape. Like, as Christians, we're not called to escape it or defeat it. From a worldly standpoint, we lose. This is the example that our Lord has given to us. From a worldly standpoint, like if we're atheists and we're going to look at this completely historically, Christ lost. Jesus of Nazareth lost. Like, he lost his if you're saying, oh, he was some, we're speaking in a worldly way.
Right.
He was leading a rebellion, right? A political rebellion or whatever. A revolutionary leader. Well, he lost. But we know he didn't lose. Right? Trampling down death by death. Like, this is, we don't escape it. We don't win. That's the other thing. Like, we don't win in any worldly sense.
Right. And
right?
That's the gospel.
That's the gospel. That is the gospel. So I think it is to say, becoming Christian. And again, yet another Father Turbo thing, which I'm sure that he's quoting other fathers, is, becoming Christian isn't your means of protecting yourself. Becoming Christian is painting a target on your back.
Right.
Like, it's the opposite of protecting yourself. It's how you get salvation.
Right.
It's how you make the suffering have meaning, but it's not a means of escaping suffering at all. Quite the contrary.
Right. Great point. Next one comes from Dr. Vagisil, very busy doctor. Throws in $1. Says, the adoration, mental capacity, and emotions we are to experience and show when viewing icons is consumed by visual social media. Worldly images drain our soul and seed, while icons nourish our soul, noose, and bring peace that senses can't explain. Amen to that. Yeah, I just did a stream, I think, a week and a half ago with Father Turbo on black mirrors and inverted iconography. So we were talking about, he went into the theology of iconography and then into black mirrors and how this is inverting everything that's good, true, and beautiful about our theology. Next one comes from Meta Ninjas, throws in $5 and says, have either of you come across the term, again, I've never seen this word, magnecule, Magnecule, by chance? God bless and thank you. I've never seen that word. Yourself?
Should we look it up?
I guess we can. Magnecule.
Magnecule. That's interesting. I can't even figure out just from the roots what
a hypothetical chemical entity supposed to have a novel type of bond consisting of atoms held together by magnetic fields arising from toroidal polarization of their electron orbitals.
No. Strange. I don't know.
I'm not familiar.
I'm not familiar either.
Yeah,
I'm not familiar either.
I'll have to come back to you on that one, but I do appreciate the support, brother. Thank you so much. He's actually over in Satan's Playpen in LA, and he just went to his first liturgy this past Sunday. So
glory to God.
Yeah, glory to God to him. He said he really loved it. Dr. Vadshill throws in another $1 and says gold and silver is good, but you have problems fractionalizing it for buying goods. Testing authenticity, having to physically secure and move it. CBDCs are closest to the mark of the beast system. Bitcoin is just voluntary if people find value in it.
Yep. I'd say that's pretty good. I'd say that's a pretty good summation.
And Dr. Vadshill throws in another one for $1 and says our government is based on decentralization of power with branches of government blockchain. It's just a system that incentivizes transparency, and you can also build helpful smart contracts like a decentralized Bible study group app. Just use it for God's will.
So decentralization is an interesting term, and because it's like, what are you centralizing and what are you decentralizing? Right. And the answer is authority. The answer is authority. Right. And it's really a matter of powers and principalities. Like when this can help us to get into this idea of powers and principalities. And it's like, yes, the government has these branches, but the authority of the government is a central authority. So it's like all of the branches are acting with the authority of the United States government. Mm-hmm. Now it's spread apart, but don't think that like just because there are multiple members that are doing something that central authority isn't there. And I think really, as Orthodox people, it's not that we want necessarily a decentralized world, but what we understand is that we don't want the authority of man, first off, right? We don't want a man to be at the top, a human, and that we certainly don't want it to be demonic. We don't want it to be the prince of this world, right? We don't want it to be centralized. But at the end of the day, our orientation is singular, isn't it? Like, we can only look at one thing at any given time. And so, yeah, I mean, the decentralization, maybe it's a bad term, and for some people it's become a bit of an idol. There's a lot of idolatry around this idea of decentralization. So it's a tough one. I would say more that, and that's why I really lean towards sovereignty. That the idea is that what we're looking for is tools that bring us closer to the sovereign, a way of life that brings us closer to the real sovereign, so we can recognize the sovereign, and that it's the sovereign that loves mankind. Right. So, and that's really where we need to go to, and it's just we need to move away from the central authority that we know is demonic.
Right. Which, again, I think a metaphor we didn't get into, but the sort of all-seeing eye. I mean, that's what the AI system is going to be once it's fully in place, and it'll have a human counterpart, which will be the Antichrist. But I mean, it's the Eye of Sauron. It's looking for the rings of power, and it's totally abstract and it's depersonified. It has no personhood. It's the definition of the absence of.
That's right.
Next super chat comes in from our sister Rachel Wilson and says, I love the channel membership emojis. Also, really loving the streams lately. Good energy and entertainment. Well, thank you so much, Rachel. God bless you. And thank you for the $10 super chat. God bless you and the family, and Andrew as well. Tell him I said hi. Next one comes from Dr. Vagisil again. Man, it's been a wordy little doctor tonight. And he says, I agree. A lot of people see Bitcoin as number go up and don't understand the helpful thing you can build to help other people with a distributed ledger. It's a struggle between trusting God, but also not wanting your purchasing power to dip from inflation.
Yeah, well, this is very interesting. Just even this idea of purchasing power. Even this idea that we would value, because purchasing power is ultimately like it's about money. Like it's the value. We don't want the value of our money to decrease, and like, well, then we should be putting up our treasures in heaven, really. And how might that manifest? Like, well, what are the things that they can't take away? Well, your skills is something that they can't take away. right? And we've lost that more and more, right? To where it's like there was a time when if you were a tradesman, you could just take off, right? It's like, oh, I'm a carpenter, I'm a blacksmith, whatever. You could just go to another place and you'd know that you were good. You just, oh, well, you don't have a blacksmith here? Okay, I'm here now. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's something someone could never take away. Never take away. And instead we've traded that real wealth for some idea of a number that, again, increasingly is just a number in a database. And by the way, that includes the number in the distributed ledger. I say it's just as worthless. That number of Bitcoin that you have in your Bitcoin wallet is just as arbitrary, artificial, and worthless as the number in the database next to the likes on a Twitter post.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's we've got to get ourselves out of that mindset, and we've got to like the real, even the things that we can't touch, but the things that we can experience.
Right. That's what I was going to say is they can't take away your memories. You're talking about your skill sets. And I did a whole stream on what I call technological atrophy. And so I showed a bunch of papers on the growth of illiteracy, on the growth of the inability to read a map, the inability to memorize, the inability to hold attention over a minute. And so this is technological atrophy, because as you began our conversation, how getting the AI to do everything, your recipe, this isn't an elevation of your humanity. This is actually a degradation, and you're going to atrophy the qualities and the attributes that, again, are unique to being made in the image of God. And
you stop working.
Yeah.
And we get right back to this idea that, like, wow, okay, so that wasn't actually a curse out of the garden, right? That was like, oh, okay, that's actually a means for us to return. It's actually a map, right? It's a map for repentance and for salvation. Is that, no, you got to work. You got to work.
Yep, got to work. Next super chat comes from PBF Live, actually a parishioner of Father Turbo over in Kansas City.
Beautiful.
God bless you, brother. And he says, thank you both. Throws in $25. Thank you so much, brother, for the generous super chat. Really do appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. And then my buddy, he's actually a month older than me, but technically I'm his godfather. Dr. Mo throws in $20 and says, how does Cyprian see the future of money playing out?
Well, I think money's always going to be what money has been. I mean, if you look at the history of money, you can sort of see the future of money. Money is magic. I mean, it's a magic spell.
Yes.
And it's as we said, like it's a tool, and it has always been a tool for getting humans to do what you want them to do. And we've seen this over and over and over and over again. It's the easiest way to control a population is to introduce a monetary system, have control over it, and get them to desire money. Just breed the love of money. And, well, the love of money is the root of all evil.
Absolutely.
You know, that's fractal. That's fractal, because it's like the amount of evil that you can do if you have control over money and everybody loves the money. The amount of evil that you can do to those people is incalculable.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yep. And that's the state of the world we live in with the fiat currencies, printing press,
Indeed.
Printing press go burr.
Indeed.
That's basically the world we live in now.
So we always will go toward money. Like society will always always degrade and go toward money because there's a spiritual battle taking place.
Right.
Like, even if this current monetary system falls apart, many monetary systems have fallen apart in the past. Even if this current one falls apart, and even if we have a situation like we discussed where it starts out very virtuous, right? Where it's like, yeah, we've got these Bitcoin networks and they're going, eventually they get big and we're fallen, right? And that's it. It's in our fallen nature to corrupt it. And we got to go through this. We got to go through this again. It's only through holding to tradition. It's only through right orientation. It's only really through the church,
right? And it's only
that we're able to sustain anything.
Yeah.
That's it. Well, that we're able to sustain. Without the church, I mean, we'd already be done.
We would already, absolutely. I mean, and yeah, it's the real thing. And so it's the hospital. That's why we got to get in there and let the mystery heal our souls.
That's it.
Next super chat comes from Tyler, throws in 364 and says, forgive me if you touched on it already, turned in a bit late. Mr. Cyprian, could you talk about smart contracts, a tool for securing sovereignty or enslavement? Question. He wants to know if smart contracts are a tool for sovereignty or enslavement.
I mean, smart contracts. So what is a smart contract? A smart contract is a little program that runs on a blockchain that has what they call a virtual machine. So there's a blockchain called Ethereum, a network called Ethereum, and the protocol. And that was the first one to really introduce this type. At the end of the day, what people should know about this is it was invented by a 19-year-old, a very intelligent 19-year-old, but a brilliant 19-year-old, but also a highly autistic, high functioning, but highly autistic 19-year-old.
That's crazy.
And the thing is, you could be a brilliant 19-year-old, but you're still 19 years old.
Yeah.
And the one thing that you cannot have as a 19-year-old is wisdom.
Right.
And so what he created was he basically created a world computer. And he called the little programs that you can run on this world computer smart contracts. And anybody can write them and anybody can put them up. And basically, to run a smart contract, you need to use the native currency to run it. So it's kind of like a little machine, and you use the native currency, you pay the smart contract in a way to get it to run, and they call it gas. And that's what Ethereum is. All of Ethereum is these little smart contracts running. Is it a tool for sovereignty in and of itself? I mean, it's just a little program running. It could be used, I guess it could be used for good. It could be used for ill. How has it been used, right? So if it's like, you shall know them by their fruits, how has it been used? Almost exclusively scams.
Oh.
Scams. Are there a few people who have created some cool smart contracts? Yes. But what are the majority? The majority are just basically Rube Goldberg machines that shuffle money around from one person to another and pump coins and create, things that nobody will ever use. It leads to, it's preying on greed. So for me, I don't use Ethereum virtual machine. I don't use those blockchains. I don't find them useful. I just don't see anything there for them. But to say anybody who tells you it's some sort of special tool for that a smart contract is a tool for sovereignty, you could just, they're trying to sell you a bill of goods. You should just walk away from them.
They're selling you the Brooklyn Bridge.
Yeah, exactly.
Next, jeez Louise, Dr. Vagisil just threw in 2 more super chats. One for $3 here. He says, when Father Turbo is on stream, I keep hearing it's Turbo time in Schwarzenegger's voice.
Now he's just cheaply trolling.
Yeah. Stay as close to nature and physical communion with your neighbor and God. And if technology is eroding those, then it's gone too far. Pull back. Good advice.
Hey, I think that's good. That's good. But technology can also enhance our relationship with nature. And it has, clearly. Right? I mean, humans, we're able to live in environments that we certainly couldn't live in if we didn't have, the building technologies that we have. Animal husbandry, that's a technology. I think that it's all about discernment. At the end of the day, it's all about discernment. And, there's the way of life and the way of death. Like, is this leading towards life? We can feel it viscerally. Is this leading towards life, or is this leading me towards death? And that's there. We've been given that. We've been given that discernment as a gift. So we just need to start praying and listening.
Yeah. And that's why once you get into the church, you get baptized, you become more sensitive to what's life-giving and what's life-taking. And that's part of the spiritual life of being an Orthodox Christian. Next one comes from Dr. Vagisil again. This one, $2, and says, our relationship with God, helpful skills, and community are more valuable than any physical and digital resource. Whether we are rich, poor, we should never stop working. I see baby boomers from humble start become eroded by consumerism. They need the church.
Finding, I mean, the one of the most valuable things is like finding something that gives you, where you find great meaning, that is life-giving, and that doesn't cost you anything monetarily, really. Right? To where it's something that you can do and that you can go to over and over and over. The more of those things that you have, I think the more that we can start to appreciate what it is that the church gives us, right? Because one of those things that can't be taken away is our prayer rule.
Right.
You know, like if we're going to be thrown in prison, and whatever we've memorized, whatever hymns or the Psalms we've memorized, whatever we have from lay services that we've memorized, any of these things, it's like those are the things that can't be taken away from us. And so it's like the reflection of that is how many of those things do you have in your life? Because those are all a sort of a reflection of prayer.
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah. How many things do you have that they can't take away? Yeah.
And that's not building up your treasures in heaven, I don't know what is.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And that's something all of us can be more conscious of and also work actively towards, no matter our financial situation or our job.
And you'll never feel poor. The people who I've known, who I've seen that have those things in their life and who live a life that way, even if they have no money, you would never look at them and say this person is poor.
Right.
That's what's so interesting.
Yeah.
You know, you look at them and in so many ways you're like, oh, I envy the richness of this person's life.
Right.
You know,
yeah,
so
that's a great point. Kindred throws in 1999 with prayer hands. Thank you so much, Kindred. God bless you, brother.
Very good.
And then our last and final super chat comes from Tyler. Throws in another 364. He's the one that asked about smart contracts.
Ah, yes.
And he said, are you the author of Render Unto Caesar? ?
Yes.
Show your books, please.
Yes, I am. under another name. So some people who have known me for years know me as Vin Armani. So Cyprian is my baptismal name. Yep. Yeah. I mean, I've written several books. Render Unto Caesar is the latest one. So I finished that one when I was here. So it's 2021, and it's called. So the full title is Render Unto Caesar: Prophecy, Prophet, and Proof of Work in the Dim Age. So it's got, if people are interested in some of these thoughts about Bitcoin and, you know, how it relates sort of spiritually, at least in terms of how we can see it if we have the right spiritual orientation. Yeah, that book is there. It's only available for cryptocurrency if people want to purchase it. Theproofof.work. And you could buy like digital copies. If you want audiobooks, they're there, whatever. But it's only for cryptocurrency. You have to buy it in cryptocurrency. So yes, it's about it's the sovereignty issue again, right? If we're gonna promote it, we got to live it. We got to be it.
Is there anything? I have your email in the video description. Again, thank you so much for being generous with your time. I did not plan on talking for 2 hours and 40 minutes, but it was a fascinating conversation. I really, really enjoyed it. I'm sure everybody else did.
Thank you for having me.
No, thanks for coming on, man. I really do appreciate it. What do you want to leave with the people? Where can they reach you? Again, I got your YouTube channel, Cyprian. It's in the video description. Everybody click it. Go give him a follow. What would you like to tell people?
I mean, probably the best way to keep track of me is probably Twitter, at Cyprian OUS. So at Cyprianus. Yeah, I think that's probably it. I tweet a lot.
I'll go ahead and add your Twitter, the link in the video description as well. So go follow him on Twitter and follow his YouTube channel. And we just had one more come in from Old Boy. Throws in $10 and says, thanks for your work, both of you. COTEL and the Royal Path are drawing me to Orthodoxy. Pray for me, Logan.
Beautiful.
Well, God bless, brother. I wish you nothing but the best, and be sincere and earnest on your journey, and I have no doubt that you'll make it. But again, that is it. Thank you so much, brother.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. And everybody out there, smash that like, give the stream a share, and I will see you all next time. Until then, as always, God bless.